Chapter 534. In the secret chamber, Feng Shamo was sitting on a chair with a gloomy face. Now his whole body was as black as charcoal, and there were many burns on his face. He looked very scary. Sulwan's mouth was also slightly open. She had thought that Leng Shiqi would suffer a little, but now it was Feng Shamo who had made a mess of him. Leng Shiqi angrily cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Great Pavilion Leader. I'm no longer the Great Pavilion Leader. My name is Feng Mo now. I'm here to help you on behalf of the Deputy Pavilion Leader." Feng Shamo stared at Leng Shiqi with shining eyes, and his tone was emotionless. But in fact, Feng Shamo's heart was still a little shaken. Back then, he had stepped into the gang spirit realm at a young age, and was promoted to Great Pavilion Leader. He had destroyed 2 third-rate sects in a row and shocked Donglin County. He was in high spirits. This also made his ambition grow. He began to gather people to fight for the position of the next pavilion leader. But not long ago, Inkfrost Ghostman personally came to him and told him about the Bloodseed project. He also told him that as long as he could help Leng Shiqi carry out the Bloodseed project smoothly, Inkfrost Ghostman would secretly support him. So Feng Shamo came. If he could get Inkfrost Ghostman's support, his qualification to be the pavilion leader's successor would basically be secured. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, was just an outstanding backup in his impression. When Feng Shamo first met Leng Shiqi, he was still a little spirit transformation realm cultivator, not even in the celestial realm. He was indeed a weakling. Even though Feng Shamo knew that he was the winner of the Blood Fog Island, he still didn't pay much attention to him. So Feng Shamo gave Leng Shiqi a task, which was to break through to the spiritual pulse realm as soon as possible. He wanted to see how talented Leng Shiqi was. Reality proved that Leng Shiqi had broken through to the spiritual pulse realm within 3 months, and was indeed worthy of Feng Shamo's attention. Unfortunately, after the illusory spirit secret realm, Leng Shiqi returned to the Blood Garment Pavilion, and started the Bloodseed project. The two had not met since. In the previous battle in the courtyard, the more Feng Shamo fought, the more frightened he became. This was because he realized that if he didn't use his full strength, he would really be injured by the Leng Shiqi. Unknowingly, the huge gap between them had shrunk to such an extent. Even Feng Shamo was a little scared. Would he be surpassed by Leng Shiqi in the future? Therefore, Feng Shamo's emotions were very complicated. He could only use indifference to hide his true thoughts. Sulwan noticed that the atmosphere in the room was about to drop to freezing point. She spoke up in a timely manner. "Leng Shiqi, do you have any plans after this? What do we need to do?" Leng Shiqi thought for a moment, then said, "According to the rules of the Dark Lightning Guard headquarters, every guard unit often has missions. It's just that my 29th guard unit has just been reorganized and hasn't received a mission yet. I plan to take the initiative to accept a mission in a few days. With our strength, we can complete a large number of missions and obtain a large amount of merits and experience, which will allow us to advance faster." "You're following the prescribed order too closely," Feng Shamo continued. "As far as I know, there are more than 1 or 2 senior inspectors in the Dark Lightning Guard headquarters. When will it be your turn?" "Senior brother Feng, don't be impatient. Look." Leng Shiqi took out the inner supervisor token and said, "Actually, Eunuch Gao has already given me the inner supervisor token. I just need to wait for my cultivation and experience to reach a certain level before I can be promoted on my own." Whoosh. Sulwan and Feng Shamo's gazes immediately locked onto the token. Their eyes were more or less filled with surprise. Their evaluation of Leng Shiqi had unknowingly increased. Feng Shamo said in a low voice, "Since you've already paved the way, let's do as you say." Leng Shiqi nodded. He thought of something else and asked, "Senior brother Feng, senior sister Sulwan, when will the third person appear? I need to be prepared." Feng Shamo and Sulwan looked at each other and shook their heads. "We don't know who the third person is either. The Vice Pavilion Master only said that he would appear at an appropriate time." This sentence again? Leng Shiqi had heard enough. This Inkfrost Ghost Man was too good at keeping people in suspense. Leng Shiqi could only say, "The two of you can cultivate in the secret room for the night. I'll go arrange your accommodations." After leaving the secret room, Leng Shiqi called He Feichen over and told him that he wanted to accept a mission as soon as possible. He Feichen said that there was no problem. As long as the courtyard was repaired, everything would be easy to arrange. Leng Shiqi looked at the ruined courtyard and felt a wave of helplessness. He also realized that no matter where he went recently, he would wreak havoc. He Feichen was just about to turn and leave when he suddenly stopped. He scratched his head and said, "Sir, we can't accept any missions for the next 2 days. The day after tomorrow is the regular meeting. You have to attend." Regular meeting? Leng Shiqi was confused. He Feichen slapped his head again. This subordinate almost forgot. "Sir, you don't know about the regular meeting. The Dark Lightning Guard's headquarters holds this meeting at the end of every month. Anyone with a position higher than the envoy inspector has to attend. This includes the 4 great stewards. As for whether or not the commander will be there, that's not certain." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi guessed that even if he attended the meeting, he would just be sitting around. Even the 4 great stewards were there, so where would he get the chance to speak? 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the courtyard had been renovated. Moreover, a few array masters had come to set up the array formation. On this day, Leng Shiqi was led by He Feichen to the meeting hall of the Dark Lightning Guard's headquarters. When he walked in, he found that the place was not small. There were hundreds of seats arranged in a circle. Leng Shiqi consciously found a corner and sat down. After a while, people came in one after another. Seeing Leng Shiqi, Wu Diao also sat down. He said excitedly, "Brother Xingji, I've heard about that. You captured a master in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm alive. You're awesome. Some people who were dissatisfied with you before have stopped. Instead, they all regard you as a competitor for the promotion of the envoy inspector." Leng Shiqi smiled gently. Anyway, he had nothing to do, so he chatted with Wu Diao. He often locked himself up to practice, so he was not very familiar with other people in the Dark Lightning Guard's headquarters. Under Wu Diao's introduction, he got to know many people. At this time, 4 people came in, which made the meeting hall silent instantly. They were the 4 directors. Leng Shiqi had seen Eunuch Gao and Eunuch Hai. At this moment, he finally saw the other 2 directors. Wu Diao leaned over and said in a low voice, "Brother Xingji, that scrawny man with sinister eyes is Chief Steward Li. Li Jucheng, you might not know, but there are still factions within the Dark Thunder Guards. The Li family is the most powerful one. Do you know that 1/4 of all the people here are surnamed Li? Director Li is the most deeply rooted in the Dark Lightning Guard, so it's not easy to provoke him. As for the burly man on the side, he is Director Shintuzhen. He has practiced martial arts and is invincible in close combat. He was born in the military and has a close relationship with many generals in the imperial capital. It's an eye-opener for me to see the 4 directors at once." Leng Shiqi looked at the 4 chief stewards and realized that among the 4 of them, Eunuch Gao had a background in the palace. Chief Steward Hai had the most seniority and was highly respected. Chief Steward Li's family faction was deeply rooted. Sure enough, the position of one of the 4 great chiefs wasn't something that an ordinary person could sit on. Chapter 535. From the moment the 4 managers appeared to the moment they sat down, no one dared to make a ruckus. After Eunuch Gao sat down, he closed his eyes and rested. Manager Hai's eyelids drooped, looking listless. Shintuzhen crossed his arms, looking like he was not going to make a sound. Wu Diao explained in a low voice, "If the Grand Commander does not come, the 4 managers will take turns to preside over the meeting. This time, Manager Li will preside over the meeting." Li Juqing swept his gaze around and said, "Let's begin." Next, the deputy managers of the next circle reported the important matters of the month one by one. These deputy managers were in charge of the affairs of their respective provinces and counties. They had the authority to deal with ordinary matters, but if there were some tricky matters, they had to report it at the regular meeting. Of course, if the situation was urgent, they could go directly to the 4 managers. Leng Shiqi lost interest when he saw this. He leaned back in his chair and dozed off. After a little less than an hour, the words of a deputy general manager shook his mind. Manager Li, the Thunder Destruction Alliance in Shantai Prefecture, has caused a lot of trouble recently, and is rapidly growing. The Dark Thunder Guards in Shantai Prefecture can no longer handle it. A bunch of trash. As Dark Thunder Guards, they actually dared to betray us and join the Thunder Destruction Alliance. Investigate the people who helped them to their positions. Li Juqing growled. It seemed that his temper was not very good. This subordinate is already investigating. The Shantai Prefecture's inspector has already resigned. That person lowered his head and said. Li Juqing said impatiently, I only look at the results. If you don't give me the name list in 3 days, you don't need to work anymore. Shantai Prefecture is in such a big mess. What did the Discipline Commission say? That person quietly wiped his cold sweat. The Discipline Commission of Shantai Prefecture did not ask about this matter. They said that the Thunder Destruction Alliance is not a spirit cultivation sect, and is just a scattered organization. They don't have jurisdiction over it. Li Juqing did not get angry this time. It seemed that the Discipline Commission's indifference was within his expectations. The Discipline Commission is a bunch of idle people. They don't have many missions in a year. I think they are about to be bored to death. What do the 3 of you think? Eunuch Gao and Manager Hai were still lost in thought. Only Shen Tizhen said in a low voice, there are only 2 methods. Mobilize the Dark Thunder Guards in the surrounding provinces, or send people over from the headquarters. Li Juqing pondered for a moment and said, I remember that last time, the 29th Guard Squad was in charge of eliminating the Thunder Destroyer Union. In the end, they were almost completely wiped out. Who wants to go this time? As soon as he said this, the eunuchs and envoy inspectors all lowered their heads and looked around. It was clear that none of them wanted to get involved in this mess. According to the intelligence, there were at least 3 or 4 masters of Gang Spirit Realm in the Thunder Exterminating League. If they wanted to wipe them out, they needed at least 1 eunuch and 2 guards. However, in that case, casualties were unavoidable. Most likely, the casualties would not be small. Therefore, no matter how great the reward was, it was useless. If the resources were gone, the worst that could happen was that his cultivation would be slower. But if he was gone, then everything would be gone. Such a result was foreseeable. Of course, no one would take the initiative to go. Seeing that none of his subordinates was willing to stand out, Li Juqing was very angry. However, he did not lose his temper. Instead, he changed the topic and said, I heard that the newly appointed envoy inspector of the 29th Guard Squad has outstanding strength and limitless prospects. Anyway, the 29th Guard Squad knows more about the Thunder Exterminating League. Why not let them go again? Leng Shiqi's eyes suddenly twitched. Recently, he had planned to take on a task, but this task was too difficult. However, he did not panic. After all, his predecessor had Eunuch Gao. Even if he had to go, he might be able to complete this task. As expected, Eunuch Gao seemed to wake up suddenly. He said in a hoarse voice, No. What can I do for you, Manager Gao? Li Juqing seemed to know that Eunuch Gao would speak, so he turned around and asked. The 29th Guard Squad has just been reorganized. Its strength is not enough. That's true. However, I will communicate with the Discipline Department and ask them to send some people over. The Thunder Exterminating League is not a concern. Eunuch Gao glanced at Li Juqing with a complicated expression. He said slowly, The envoy inspector of the 29th Guard Squad, Lu Xingji, is not free recently. Li Juqing's expression immediately turned ugly. Even if he did not want to go, he should find a better reason. Not free? What kind of excuse was that? Eunuch Gao was still a little lazy. Forget it. I originally planned to say it at the end of the regular meeting. Now, I will say it in advance. Why are you not coming over? His last 4 words made everyone confused. Who was he calling over? Leng Shiqi and Wu Diyao understood tacitly. They stood up from their seats and walked over to Eunuch Gao. Others did not understand. Eunuch Gao said, I was not in the Dark Thunder Guard Squad previously. Do you know where I went? Eunuch Gao was actually keeping them in suspense. This made those who were familiar with him a little stunned. However, everyone present knew that he went to preside over this year's elite meeting. However, they did not know the results of the elite meeting. After all, The elite meeting's method of selecting talents from within the Thunderfire dynasty was extremely secretive. They were afraid that someone would interfere. Now that eunuch Gao called out Leng Shiqi and Wu Diyao. Could it be that these two were the winners of the elite meeting? Eunuch Gao pointed at Wu Diyao and said, "This time, the elite meeting selected a total of 5 outstanding geniuses in all aspects. Wu Diyao is one of them." Everyone immediately looked at Wu Diyao at the same time. Their eyes were more or less filled with envy. This was especially true for those who were acquainted with Wu Diyao. They had only just learned of his identity. Originally, everyone thought that he was only slightly related to eunuch Gao. It turned out that he was one of the winners of the elite meeting. What did this mean? This meant that Wu Diao's future was bound to be meteoric. Those who were on good terms with him were secretly rejoicing. Those who usually ignored or hated him were filled with regret. Everyone then thought of Leng Shiqi. Since Wu Diyao was the winner of the elite meeting, then Leng Shiqi, who had been in the limelight recently, was probably one as well. Eunuch Gao turned his finger and said, "Everyone has heard of Lu Xingji's name recently. He is the champion of this year's elite meeting. He is also a personal disciple of my family." Boom. Eunuch Gao's words caused a huge uproar in the conference hall. This Lu Xingji was actually the champion of the elite meeting. What kind of place was the elite meeting? It was a gathering of the most outstanding geniuses of the 36 counties. To be able to kill his way out of the encirclement and become the champion meant that he was definitely a monstrous genius. The previous champions of the elite meeting had all become great figures who could shake a region if they did not die prematurely. They did not all stay in the Dark Lightning Guard or the Discipline Commission. Some guarded the border, some became the Imperial Guard, and some entered the Imperial family's Hall of Worship. However, no matter where they were, their brilliance could not be hidden. Chapter 536. The discussion in the conference hall rose one after another. No wonder he could kill Wei Xiangming. No wonder he could capture an assassin in the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm alive. No wonder he is the chief of the elite society. A few days ago, I thought he had sucked up to eunuch Gao. It turns out that I was blind. What was more surprising was what eunuch Gao said just now. The chief of the elite society was eunuch Gao's personal disciple. Everyone looked at Leng Shiqi with not only shock, but also obvious jealousy and eagerness. The identity of eunuch Gao's personal disciple was definitely not inferior to the chief of the elite society. The identity of the disciple of one of the 4 directors was enough for him to do whatever he wanted in the Dark Thunder Guards. Those deputy general managers, on the other hand, had thought deeper into the matter. Eunuch Gao did have disciples, but his disciples were all eunuchs in the palace and had never been transferred to the Dark Thunder Guards. Then the appearance of Leng Shiqi seemed to be a signal to inherit eunuch Gao's position. What these deputy directors most expected and desired was, of course, to go further and become one of the 4 directors. Now the appearance of Leng Shiqi made them feel a little threatened. Li Jueqing and Shen Tuzhen also looked at Leng Shiqi with surprise. In fact, they had guessed that Leng Shiqi might be the winner of the elite society, but they really didn't expect him to be the chief. However, Manager Hai was still calm. He should have known it long ago. Eunuch Gao deliberately paused to give everyone time to digest and said, "They will enter the Dragon Vein to cultivate in a few days, so Lu Xingji has no time to deal with the Thunder Exterminating League." Enter the Dragon Vein to cultivate. There was a sour taste in the conference hall unconsciously. The Dragon Vein was the lifeline of the Thunder Flame dynasty. Only the strong in the Imperial Hall of Worship, or those who had made outstanding contributions, were qualified to enter it for cultivation. 99% of the people present would not be able to enter it in their lives. So that's the case. But it doesn't matter. When he comes out of the Dragon Vein, his strength will have improved greatly. Then, we will have a greater chance of eliminating the Thunder Extermination Union. Li Jueqing still decided to let Leng Shiqi deal with the Thunder Extermination Union. Eunuch Gao turned around and looked at Li Jueqing. There was no emotion in his eyes, but everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. However, Li Jueqing turned a blind eye to it. Since eunuch Gao and I don't agree, then let's have a vote. The Dark Thunder Guard has never been a one-man show. Hearing that Li Jueqing wanted to vote, Eunuch Gao's heart sank. It seemed that Li Jueqing had come prepared today. Shen Tezhen must have been bribed by Li Jueqing on this matter. And Manager Hai had lost the 28 guards to Eunuch Gao a few days ago. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had killed Wei Xiangming in front of everyone, not giving Manager Hai any face. Therefore, Manager Hai would definitely stand on Li Jueqing's side. Once the voting began, the result would definitely be 3-1. At that time, Eunuch Gao would lose a lot of face. It had to be said that Li Jueqing's move was quite good. He had taken advantage of Leng Shiqi's fame these days to rope in the other two managers. Today, Eunuch Gao had announced that he was the leader of the elite society. Other than being shocked, there was more fear towards him. The mission of destroying the Thunder Alliance was very difficult. Leng Shiqi would most likely not be able to complete it. At that time, his first mission as the envoy inspector would end in failure, and his reputation would be ruined. If he really completed it, then it would be what he should do as the leader of the elite society. For Li Jueqing, this was a business that he would not lose out on no matter what. Everyone looked at Eunuch Gao, waiting for his reaction. However, at this time, Leng Shiqi stepped forward and said, "Since Manager Li is like this lowly one can't thank you enough. I will accept this mission." The others immediately looked at Leng Shiqi in surprise. Was he crazy? Could he not see that this was a trap set by Li Jueqing? Eunuch Gao also looked at Leng Shiqi. In his opinion, no matter how strong Leng Shiqi was, he was only one person. The War Thunder Guards under him were all at the Spirit Aperture realm. They were experts outside, but it was still not enough to destroy the Thunder Alliance. Moreover, Leng Shiqi was not an impulsive person. It was impossible for him not to see the strangeness in it. Sure enough, Leng Shiqi's eyes revealed a look that conveyed a message. "I am confident." Eunuch Gao nodded without a trace and took a step back. He did not say anything more. Since Leng Shiqi was so confident and took the initiative to take the mission, this was his own choice. Then he had to be prepared for failure. Once Leng Shiqi failed, his position in Eunuch Gao's heart would also decline. In the future, he might not enjoy rich resources. Wu Diao, who had no sense of presence on the side, was also very confused. He did not know what Leng Shiqi was thinking. In fact, Leng Shiqi really had some confidence. According to the available information, the Thunder Alliance had 3 to 4 masters at the Gang Spirit realm, a dozen at the Spirit Aperture realm, and the rest at the Spirit Pulse realm. As for the spirit cultivators below the 4 realms of celestial being, they did not care about them at all. At most, they would hire some peripheral personnel to help them inquire about information. On Leng Shiqi's side, there were also a dozen spirit cultivators at the Spirit Aperture realm, especially Feng Shamo, who was at the middle stage of the Gang Spirit realm. Back then, Feng Shamo had just broken through to the Gang Spirit realm and killed the Elder of Book Mountain, who was at the 3rd level of the Gang Spirit realm, in the Golden Wing Academy. It could be seen that his strength was strong. If he fully exerted his battle strength, he could definitely be comparable to the late stage of the Gang Spirit realm. There was also Mr. Huang, who had been in seclusion for several days and was trying to break through to the Gang Spirit realm. He would probably come out in the next few days. Then he would have one more Gang Spirit realm spiritual practitioner. As for himself, Eunuch Gao just mentioned that he would soon enter the dragon vein to cultivate. Then his cultivation and strength would also improve by leaps and bounds. In terms of the top combat strength, he would not be weaker than the Thunder Alliance. Just now Li Jueqing also said that the Discipline Commission would send some people over, so there was enough manpower. As for the intelligence, he was not worried. The reason why the Thunder Alliance was so arrogant now was that there were high-level members of the Dark Thunder Guards. They were familiar with the methods of the Dark Thunder Guards and could escape from the pursuit every time. So they had not found their nest yet. But don't forget that in addition to the intelligence network of the Dark Thunder Guards, Leng Shiqi could also mobilize the intelligence network of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. As long as he secretly got in touch with the branch of the Blood Cloak Pavilion in Shantai County, it would not take long for him to find out the nest of the Thunder Alliance. So Leng Shiqi took the initiative to take the task after careful consideration. Li Jueqing suddenly laughed. Leng Shiqi's approach was also a little unexpected. He could not understand whether Leng Shiqi was confident or conceited. But it didn't matter. Anyway, his purpose had been achieved. You deserve to be the chief of the elite club. Your courage alone is extraordinary. Well, after you come back from the dragon vein, we will set off. I will wait for your good news. Chapter 537. After the regular meeting, Leng Shiqi's name resounded throughout the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard. Whether it was his identity as the leader of the elite meeting, or as Eunuch Gao's personal disciple, or taking the initiative to take on the mission to eliminate the Thunder Destruction Alliance. All of these were talked about enthusiastically, and Leng Shiqi called He Feichen directly after returning to the 29 guards. Sir. He Feichen's face was a bit tired. These 2 days, he was the one who took care of the construction of the courtyard, and also participated in the arrangement of the array. It was exhausting. There should be some alchemy masters in the inner city, right? How many people can refine the awakening pill? Leng Shiqi asked. He Feichen thought for a moment and said, Yes, I remember there are 3 or 4. Sir, you want to refine the awakening pill? The awakening pill was definitely the most desired resource for spirit aperture realm cultivators. Unfortunately, it was too expensive, so some people would collect the materials and then find an alchemist. This way they could save some spirit stones, but it was a bit troublesome. Yes, help me contact an alchemist. I have prepared the materials. Yes, sir. He Feichen agreed. But if an alchemist wants to refine one awakening pill, they need to collect 3 sets of materials. After all, no one can guarantee success. As for the extra materials, they can keep them. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything, but threw him a mustard seed bag. He opened it and was stunned. Inside was a large amount of alchemy materials, and their grades weren't low. At a rough glance, there were hundreds of sets. These were the materials that Leng Shiqi started to collect in the West Wilderness to refine the awakening pill. When he was in the West Wilderness, he was already prepared to find someone to refine the awakening pill. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to go back after joining the elite meeting. Now that he was about to enter the dragon vein, his cultivation would definitely advance by leaps and bounds, but he didn't want to break through to the spirit astral realm so quickly. So he refined a large amount of awakening pills, and prepared to open a large number of spirit apertures in the dragon vein. After He Feichen was surprised, he was also a bit confused. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi was already at the 6th level of the spirit aperture realm. Even if he needed awakening pills, he wouldn't need so many, right? However, he didn't dare to ask too much. He nodded and said, Don't worry, my lord. This lowly one will definitely handle this matter well. Well, you've been busy these days. You can take 5 awakening pills after you're done, Leng Shiqi said calmly. His tone was very indifferent, as if he had just thrown 5 pieces of candy. However, He Feichen couldn't help but feel a little excited. Normally, he would have to save up a lot of spirit stones and contribution points to get a single awakening pill. Now Leng Shiqi had casually given him 5. He was also confident that as long as he could refine these 5 acupoint awakening pills, his cultivation would improve by another level. Many thanks for Darren's bestowal. This humble servant is willing to sacrifice his life. He Feichen was speaking passionately, but Leng Shiqi decided to stop him. All right, hurry up and get to work. This humble servant will take his leave. He Feichen left happily. A few days later, the 5 winners of the elite meeting once again gathered in front of the Imperial Palace's gates. After not seeing each other for a while, everyone realized that they had all changed a lot. This wasn't because of their cultivation, but because the 5 of them now held real power in their hands. The change in temperament brought about by their status was difficult to describe with words. For example, Wu Diyao had become much more confident and tactful. Speaking of Wu Diyao, it was worth mentioning that after the meeting, he had also been accepted as Shintazhen's personal disciple. His status had become even more honorable. The reason why he had chosen Shintazhen was because Manager Hai was too old. He might die one day, so the gains didn't make up for the losses. As for Li Jucheng, it was obvious that he had a bad temper. More importantly, Wu Diyao didn't want to get involved with the Li family. After the 5 of them met, Dichuan's reaction was the most intense. When they had encountered the terrifying evil statue on Wugu Mountain, Dichuan had run away because he wasn't strong enough. Although it was Leng Shiqi who had taken the initiative to let him go, Dichuan still felt a little apologetic. After that, he had gone to take a look, but he hadn't seen Leng Shiqi's shadow. Therefore, Dichuan had been worried that Leng Shiqi might have died. Now that he had seen him, he could finally put down the stone in his heart. With a somewhat embarrassed expression, he said, "Brother Lu, that day." Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said, "It's fine. Brother Di doesn't need to worry." Dichuan could only scratch his head. Leng Shiqi took out a mustard seed bag and handed it to Delta Origi. Inside was the item that Ink Frost Ghost Man wanted him to give to Delta Origi. He said that it was a reward for Delta Origi from Bone Devil. However, Leng Shiqi hadn't been idle ever since he came to the imperial capital. He didn't have the chance to find Delta Origi. After he came out of the Dragon Vein, he would have to go to Shantai County. He wouldn't have the chance, so he might as well give it to them in person. The others didn't say anything when they saw this. They all thought that Leng Shiqi was pursuing Delta Origi. Only Wu Diao secretly gave Leng Shiqi a thumbs up. A few days ago, he was hiding a mistress in his golden house. Now he was pursuing Blood Moon. How amazing! All right, there will be plenty of time to catch up in the future. Come with me, Eunuch Gao said coldly. Then he led the 5 people into the depths of the palace. Leng Shiqi originally wanted to take a good look at the palace, but their destination wasn't the center of the palace. Instead, they took a big detour around the palace and turned into a corner. Eunuch Gao faced a shadow in the corner with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "Later, you must go in as fast as you can. After you go in, remember to keep quiet. Do whatever the people inside tell you to do. Understood?" "Understood," the 5 people said in unison. Eunuch Gao kept making hand seals and chanting at the same time. Then, spots of golden light appeared in the shadow and vaguely formed the shape of a door. "Go in," Eunuch Gao hurriedly shouted. He didn't seem to be able to keep it up for long. Leng Shiqi and the others stepped into the light door one after another. Then, they came to a place that was shining with endless golden light. This was not the Dragon Vein, but the entrance to the Dragon Vein. As soon as they appeared, several terrifyingly powerful divine minds enveloped them. The invisible pressure made everyone's faces turn pale. Leng Shiqi had felt this pressure before. It was the pressure of an ethereal origin stage cultivator. The entrance to the Dragon Vein was guarded by several ethereal origin stage cultivators. Leng Shiqi secretly mobilized his mind power to resist the pressure. He turned around and found that Eunuch Gao didn't come in. At that moment, a dignified voice sounded. "After you enter the Dragon Vein, cultivate on your own. Don't move around casually. Otherwise, your bodies and souls will be destroyed." Before the voice finished speaking, golden lights of different intensities appeared on the 5 people's bodies. Leng Shiqi's was the densest, while Wu Diao's was the thinnest. This should determine how long they could stay in the Dragon Vein. Before they could react, the scene in front of them changed again. Leng Shiqi looked carefully and found that he had arrived at a completely quantified space. The golden spiritual qi filled the entire space like liquid. However, it was a whole and wouldn't be separated. Moreover, in the middle of the golden spiritual qi, there was a streamlined golden object that was moving. That was the Dragon Vein. It didn't have the shape of a dragon, but it had the will of a dragon. As it moved, it was like the spine of heaven and earth. Its rhythm was also in accordance with heaven's secrets. This was the Thunderfire Dynasty's Dragon Vein. Chapter 538. Leng Shiqi felt that he was a knowledgeable person who had been through a lot. However, in the face of this Dragon Vein, which was so dense that he could breathe in spiritual energy, he was still stunned. He turned his head subconsciously and found that Delta Origi and the others were no longer with him. They must have been transported to another place. But he was sure that they had the same reaction as him at this moment. Leng Shiqi closed his eyes and felt carefully. He found that even if he did not actively absorb the spiritual power, the golden spiritual power would actively enter his body and turn into a trace of pure spiritual power. He did not dare to delay any longer. He first released the Goo King and let it cultivate on its own. Maybe he could use the dragon vein to make the Goo King advance again. Then he took out a formation plate and arranged it. It was the Yin and Yang spirit gathering formation. After arranging the formation, Lung Shiqi was not stingy and directly put 500 mid-grade spiritual stones on it. When the formation was completed, with Lung Shiqi as the center, the golden spiritual power within a radius of thousands of feet gradually gathered, forming a huge golden vortex above him. He immediately sat cross-legged and began to absorb the golden spiritual power crazily. The spiritual power in his body was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, his spiritual power grew at a speed comparable to more than 10 days of hard cultivation. This speed was terrifying. After the shock, Lung Shiqi no longer had any distractions and stepped up his cultivation. Soon a day passed. At this time, his cultivation was already at the 7th level of the spirit aperture realm. In a day, he had increased a small realm, which was simply incredible in the outside world. However, Lung Shiqi had already opened 81 spiritual apertures, so there was almost no bottleneck between realms. 2 days later, his spiritual power broke through to the 8th level of the spirit aperture realm. In another 3 days, he reached the 9th level. After another day, Lung Shiqi's cultivation was at the peak of the spirit aperture realm. At this time, the spiritual power in Lung Shiqi's body was completely saturated, and the spiritual spirals had become very viscous, so they rotated slightly slowly. He could clearly feel that if he wanted to, he could condense spiritual crystals at any time and become a master half a step into the Gang spirit realm. But he chose to give up and stopped cultivating. In these 7 days, what surprised him the most was not the rapid increase in cultivation, because it was within his expectations. What surprised him was that the fire seed of the red gold earth dragon flame in his spiritual sea had more than doubled in size. Lung Shiqi did not know the reason, but he guessed that the dragon vein contained some kind of dragon qi, which greatly benefited the red gold earth dragon flame. As long as the fire seed of the red gold earth dragon flame, the flame's power would naturally be greater. Now he had 3 days he could use it. He was going to open all the spiritual apertures. Before he came here, he had enough to open the 360 spiritual apertures. Furthermore, Heifeichen had also brought him over 100 awakening pills, which could greatly increase the speed of opening spiritual cavities. Now, it was time to open the spiritual sea. As soon as he thought of this, Lung Shiqi decided to open the spiritual cavities in his legs in order from bottom to top. Then he started to practice the Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll, which recorded the method to open the spiritual apertures in the legs. After he was ready, he swallowed an orifice awakening pill. About a quarter of an hour later, a speck of light that looked like a star could be seen on his right ankle. Spiritual aperture open. The process was so smooth, as simple as eating and drinking. Lung Shiqi was delighted. At this speed, he estimated that he would only need 2 days to open all the spiritual apertures. Just as he was about to continue, he unexpectedly found that there was a tiny golden light spot in the newly opened spiritual aperture. Lung Shiqi frowned. The spiritual aperture was the foundation of cultivation. If there was a problem with the spiritual aperture, it would be the same as cutting off his cultivation path. He opened his supercilious eyes to carefully observe the golden light spot, but after a long time he could not find any clues. He only felt that the aura of the light spot was very similar to that of the dragon vein. Could it be that because I opened the spiritual aperture in the dragon vein, it also contains a trace of the dragon vein's spiritual energy? He secretly guessed. For now he could only think of it this way. As for whether it was true or not, he would know after giving it a try. Soon after, he opened another spiritual aperture, and found that there was indeed a golden light spot in it. This confirmed his previous guess. But whether this golden light spot was good or bad was hard to say, but it was most likely beneficial. At this point, Lung Shiqi did not intend to think too much about it, and continued to open the spiritual apertures. Time passed in a flash. 2 days later, Lung Shiqi closed his eyes and concentrated on circulating his spiritual energy. What he wanted to open now was the most difficult and dangerous spiritual aperture, The celestial spiritual aperture. Very few people would open this spiritual aperture because its location was too dangerous. The slightest carelessness could cause one to become mentally retarded. But as a spiritual cultivator, it was necessary to open the celestial spiritual aperture, because this spiritual aperture could greatly increase one's spiritual energy. And the celestial spiritual aperture was Lung Shiqi's last spiritual aperture. As long as he opened the celestial spiritual aperture, he would open all the spiritual apertures in his body. At the top of Lung Shiqi's head, there was a flickering light spot. That was the crucial moment when he was opening the spiritual aperture. Not long after, there was an inexplicable slight sound in the air. Looking at Lung Shiqi again, he found that the top of his head was bursting with starlight. He had finally succeeded. In his spiritual ocean, the spiritual spirals suddenly changed and began to rotate in reverse. Lung Shiqi was shocked at first. The reverse rotation of the spiritual spirals seemed to be a sign of qi deviation. But he had only opened the spiritual apertures. How could it be qi deviation? But immediately, a strange expression appeared on his face. Because after the reverse rotation of the spiritual spirals, not only did it not cause any abnormalities, but it also caused his spiritual energy to increase by another level. Now his cultivation had entered a strange realm. It was clearly higher than the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. But not half a step into the spirit astral realm? For the time being, he would call it the 10th level of the spirit aperture realm. But before he could carefully study this realm, the 360 spiritual apertures in his body uncontrollably lit up one after another. Streaks of starlight overflowed, bathing him in them. The starlight condensed into a complex and mysterious star atlas around him, rotating around him. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes, and 2 rays of starlight shot out from his eyes. He looked to his left and right, and was a little confused as to why such a situation had occurred. But when he had opened all the spiritual veins, there had also been a change, so he was experienced. Just when he did not know what to do, the complicated star atlas suddenly shrank and returned to Lung Shiqi's body. But there were still traces of starlight flowing slowly under his clothes. He tore off his clothes and found that his whole body was covered with star atlas. It turned out that the star atlas had been imprinted on his body. All of a sudden, a huge amount of information and images rushed into his mind. In the vast and boundless continent, corpses were everywhere, blood flowed like rivers, and bones were piled up like mountains. The stench seemed to hit him in the face. What surprised him was that all the bones were unusually huge and strange. Those were the bones of demonic beasts. In the sky, there was a group of people in silver robes. They controlled the stars and could destroy heaven and earth, collapse mountains and break seas. Their faces were full of arrogance and contempt for everything. They were wantonly slaughtering the ancient demonic beasts, as if they were the gods of the world. Lung Shiqi's soul stirred, and 3 words that he had never seen before but could recognize suddenly appeared. Star Clan. Chapter 539. In Shantai County, there was a mysterious hidden family called the Zhuge family. No one knew where they were or how many experts they had. The only thing they knew was that every few decades, a peerless genius would appear in Shantai County. On this day, in a mysterious different space, an old man who was on the verge of death was sitting in a huge palace. There was a huge array in the palace. Starlight shone like a nebula. However, there were countless chains looming in the nebula, as if they were sealing something. However, at this moment, the star at the core of the nebula suddenly shook violently, causing the entire nebula to twist. The old man suddenly opened his eyes, which were full of disbelief. However, that disbelief immediately turned into endless surprise. The old man laughed crazily. Ha 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 ha. How many years has it been? There are still descendants of the Star Clan in this world, and they have even activated their bloodline. The person that my Zhuge family has been waiting for has finally appeared. The time for the stars to shine on the continent has finally come. After an unknown period of time, Lung Shiqi suddenly woke up. Unconsciously, his body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. This was almost impossible for him, who was at the peak of the spirit aperture realm, and also cultivated his physique. He used his spiritual power to evaporate all the sweat and murmured, "Star Clan! Star Clan!" Suddenly he thought of something. That was when he opened all the spirit veins on the Goo God Peak. He saw a similar mysterious scene. He also knew that he had the bloodline of the Dark Shadow Clan. Now it was just Star Clan. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi's mind flashed and he hurriedly opened the system interface. Name: Lung Shiqi Lusingji Cultivation. 9th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm status. Peak Bloodline Dark Shadow Clan Star Clan Management Authority. 37% System Energy. 46% Cultivation Method. Rank 6 Cultivation Method. Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll Rank 6 Cultivation Method. Purple Lightning Thunder Melody Special Cultivation Method. Wild Demon Blood Beast Body Spiritual Skill. Rank 6 Spiritual Skill. Limitless Deadwood Spell Rank 6 Spiritual Skill. Earth Pulse Rank 6 Spiritual Skill. Continuous Blue Wave Spear Secret Technique. Desolate Seal System Coins. 300 as expected. The bloodline information showed that he had the bloodline of the Star Clan. Lung Shiqi was no stranger to the word bloodline. During the auction, Sulwan's Qingwuan bloodline shocked everyone. It was said that bloodlines had been lost for over 10,000 years. Then why did he have 2 bloodlines in his body? When he was in the Western Desolate County, he had investigated the Dark Shadow Clan. Unexpectedly, it was related to the Netherworld Temple of the Yin Yang Temple and the Netherworld Temple. Then, what was the background of this Star Clan bloodline? Vaguely, Lung Shiqi seemed to have seen information about the Star Tribe somewhere before, but he could not recall it at the moment. However, it didn't matter to him. What was the point of knowing that he had an ancient bloodline? Just like the Dark Shadow bloodline, it didn't have any effect after it was activated. Besides, even if it was useful, it wasn't that important to Lung Shiqi. After all, he still had the system, his own understanding, and his own efforts. Thinking of this, he felt a little relieved. Nothing was more practical than his own strength. Taking advantage of the less than 1 day left, he planned to condense the spirit crystal. Refining the spiritual spiral in the body and solidifying it into a spirit crystal was the first step to entering the Gang spirit realm. It was also a qualitative leap in spiritual power. For others, condensing the spirit crystal was a step that blocked most of the spiritual aperture realm cultivators. A crystal formation pill was hard to find. Even if one had a crystal formation pill, there was still a possibility of failure. Condensing the spirit crystal mainly depended on whether the foundation of one's spiritual power was deep enough, whether one's control of spiritual power was precise enough, and whether one's spiritual power was pure enough. The crystal formation pill only played a supporting role, and did not play a decisive role. Take Elder Huang for example. Because he was a rogue cultivator, his foundation was not stable when he was at the low level. Later, even if he joined the Dark Thunder Guards and had a lot of resources, it was difficult for him to rebuild his foundation. Without the crystal formation pill, he would never be able to condense the spirit crystal in his life. But to Lung Shiqi, this matter was as easy as flipping his hand. He had practiced too many high-level cultivation methods. The depth and purity of his spiritual power were completely beyond the imagination of ordinary people. What's more, he had opened up all the spiritual meridians and spiritual apertures in his body. His whole body was connected and his spiritual power was endless. It only took a little time to condense the spirit crystal. Then Lung Shiqi focused his mind and began to condense the spirit crystal. In his body, the reverse spiritual spiral was spinning rapidly under the control of Lung Shiqi. When the speed reached a certain level, the spiritual spiral looked like a flywheel, and its volume was gradually shrinking. This was the spiritual spiral that Lung Shiqi was compressing. As long as the spiritual spiral was compressed to the extreme, it would undergo a qualitative change and condense into a solid spirit crystal. At this time, the strength of Lung Shiqi's spiritual power was reflected. He did not use much strength at all to make the spiritual spiral shrink. However, condensing the spirit crystal was a meticulous and long process. After about 4 hours, the volume of the spiritual spiral had shrunk to 1/3 of its original size. But at this time, Lung Shiqi's face became more serious because he was beginning to feel the strain. No wonder so many people can't condense the spirit crystal. It's not that simple, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Although he was a little strained, he was not worried, because he was strong enough. Immediately, Leng Shiqi not only mobilized his spiritual power, but also the rich qi and blood qi hidden in his body, as well as the majestic mind power, swarmed and pressed on the spiritual spiral from all directions. Under the pressure of the powerful force, the volume of the spiritual spiral shrank again, until it was only 1/5 of its original size. Moreover, the spiritual spiral became abnormally sticky, and the speed of its rotation slowed down. As Leng Shiqi continued to compress, the spiritual spiral was no longer a spiritual spiral, but a ball. Then the ball twisted and there seemed to be a few bulges coming out of it. Leng Shiqi knew that the most critical moment had come. He mobilized all the energy in his body, and suddenly pressed down on the spiritual spiral. Buzz. There seemed to be a slight tremor between heaven and earth. At this moment, the spiritual spiral underwent a qualitative change, and condensed from liquid to solid. Suddenly, invisible spiritual pressure broke out of Leng Shiqi's body, causing the golden spiritual qi hundreds of feet around him to vibrate constantly. Half-step to Gang spirit realm. A diamond-shaped crystal was floating in his spiritual sea. It was the spirit crystal that countless spirit cultivators yearned for. However, to Leng Shiqi's surprise, there were 3 completely different marks on the spirit crystal. One was a dark evil ghost mark, one was a golden dragon mark, and the last one was a star mark. Chapter 540. Leng Shiqi looked at the 3 different marks, which corresponded to the bloodline of the Dark Shadow clan, the bloodline of the Star clan, and the Dragon vein. But what was the use of this strange spiritual crystal? Or did all the spiritual crystals condensed in the Dragon vein have a dragon-shaped mark? After all, he also had a golden light spot in his spiritual cavity, but he didn't know whether he was the only one or everyone was like this. Now no one could verify it, so he could only wait until he got out. Thinking of going out, Leng Shiqi roughly calculated that he only had half a day left. Once the time was up, he would be transmitted out of the Dragon vein. Before entering the Dragon vein, Leng Shiqi had made several plans. If time permitted, he could also try to break through to the Gang spirit realm. But now, half a day was obviously not enough, and he hadn't decided which kind of gang to condense. He now had a lot of high-level cultivation methods, and each of them could condense spiritual highland of different natures. For example, the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiend art could condense the Blood Refined Fiend astral. The 5 God Flowing Light art could cultivate the Divine Illusion spiritual astral. The Purple Lightning Thunder melody could cultivate the Purple Pole Thunderstorm. The Nirvana Remnant Wind scroll could cultivate the Nirvana Remnant Wind astral, and so on. It was reasonable to say that Blood Evil Gang was more suitable for him. But the problem was that Blood Evil Gang was too symbolic. More than 70% of the golden-striped blood-clothed killers in the blood-clothed pavilion cultivated this kind of gang. Once Leng Shiqi used it, his identity would be easily exposed. Perhaps God's Illusion spiritual highland was a good choice, but Feng Shamo had also condensed a trace of God's Illusion spiritual highland. If the two of them used similar spiritual highland, it would definitely arouse suspicion. Purple Thunder Explosion could be considered, but this kind of gang needed to be guided by external objects. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi suddenly paused. He remembered that there was still a part of the power of wind and thunder in his body that he absorbed from the godly luck stone of wind and thunder. He seldom used this power, so it was just right to condense gang. But unfortunately, there was not enough time, so he had to postpone it. Since he couldn't make any more breakthroughs in his cultivation, Leng Shiqi planned to use the last half a day to deduce spiritual techniques. The mystical aura within the Dragon vein coincided with the rhythm of heaven and earth. It was perhaps even more compatible with heaven and earth than the minor 5 elements Chaos Paradise. Leng Shiqi was ready to try fusing the Great Radiance Fist and the Black Lotus Fiend Fist again. The blazing holy light and the gloomy devil chi complemented each other. The 2 completely opposite powers were released by him. Before the 2 powers even came close, there was a strong repulsive force. This time, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry to forcefully fuse. Instead, He looked at the golden spirit force that was everywhere in the dragon vein. His eyes flashed as if he had thought of something. 2 hours later, above the Lung Shichi's head, there was a black and white dragon that was over 100 feet long, roaming the heavens and earth. On the majestic dragon head, there was a pair of golden dragon horns. Lung Shichi looked at the dragon and smiled. The dragon vein contained many strange powers. He used the golden spirit force as a medium to combine the Great Radiance Fist and the Black Lotus Fiend Fist. It was the void of the swimming dragon. Ever since he came out of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, he had been continuing to study fusing spiritual techniques. This time it was more successful because of his accumulation. The current void of the swimming dragon was not as powerful as the black and white sphere, because Lung Shichi was only at the beginning of the fusion. Even so, the void of the swimming dragon was enough to become one of his strongest trump cards. Now Lung Shichi had got ephemeral epiphyllum, pure gold earth dragon flame, wild evil demon blood beast physique, and void of the swimming dragon. In addition, his cultivation had skyrocketed. He even wanted to fight Feng Shiamo with real swords and spears. Just as he was secretly rejoicing, the golden light on his body finally dissipated completely. He directly disappeared from the dragon vein and returned to the entrance. "Leave quickly." The serious voice came again, and then a light door appeared nearby. Lung Shichi cupped his hands to the air and took back the Gu King. At this time, the Gu King had fallen into a deep sleep. As long as it woke up, it would evolve into a rank 5 demonic beast. Then he walked into the light door. Outside the light door was the inconspicuous corner, where Eunuch Gao was waiting. Seeing Lung Shichi come out, he glanced at Lung Shichi with shining eyes and nodded gently. "Not bad, better than I expected." After Lung Shichi entered the dragon vein, Eunuch Gao also calculated the level of his cultivation. With Lung Shichi's talent, it was not a problem for him to reach level 8 of the spirit aperture realm. As for level 9, it was possible. However, he came out with a cultivation of half a step into the spirit astral realm, which indeed surprised Eunuch Gao. It could also be said that it was a pleasant surprise. "Let's go." Eunuch Gao turned around and said. Lung Shichi quickly followed. He was also curious about the cultivation of the other 4 people. Zhuge Puha, Wu Diao and Di Chuan were all at the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Perhaps they were now masters of the spirit astral realm. As for Delta Origi, he was a little uncertain. So he asked, "Master, what's the cultivation of the other 4 people?" Eunuch Gao said as he walked, "Zhuge Puha and Di Chuan have broken through to the spirit astral realm. They should be consolidating their cultivation at this moment. Wu Diao and Blood Moon are the same as you, half a step into the spirit astral realm." Lung Shichi was still a little confused that Wu Diao had not broken through to the spirit astral realm. Although he could only enter the dragon vein for 2 days, he had already prepared for the breakthrough. 2 days was barely enough. As for Delta Origi, he was a little surprised that they were also half a step into the spirit astral realm. He knew best that the reason why he could cultivate so fast was because of the yin and yang spirit gathering formation. However, Delta Origi did not have the yin and yang spirit gathering formation, and they could cultivate 2 days faster than him. Delta Origi's cultivation could soar to half a step into the spirit astral realm in just 8 days. It could be seen that they were very talented in cultivation. "It's Shintezhen's idea," Eunuch Gao explained. "The cultivation method that Shintezhen passed to Wu Diao is a little special. The spirit astral realm needed to be condensed by Shintezhen himself. As for Blood Moon's talent, it's the best I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing." Lung Shichi nodded and continued to ask, "Master, do you know when the mission to destroy the Thunder Alliance will be set off?" At this time, Eunuch Gao's footsteps paused slightly, and his tone was a little colder. "Li Jueqing is ready. After you come out of the dragon vein, we will set off the next day." "Set off the next day?" Lung Shichi frowned. It was too hasty. He had thought that it would drag on for a few more days, so that he could break through to the spirit astral realm. In addition, he had some trivial things to deal with. Now he was too short of time. "Li Jueqing has always been at odds with me. I've been guarding here these days. He must have done something secretly." Eunuch Gao was also a little helpless. He could not leave, so he could only let Li Jueqing do whatever he wanted. Master, don't worry. I have some confidence in this mission. If Leng Shiqi had 70% confidence in this mission 10 days ago, now he dared to say that he had 80% or even 90% confidence. This was the confidence that cultivation and strength brought to him. Chapter 541. Eunuch Gao asked, "Why don't you tell me how confident you are?" Leng Shiqi was very confident, but he could not say it out loud. He deliberately pondered for a moment before saying, 60%. 60%? Eunuch Gao turned his head and looked at Leng 17 in confusion. "Since you're so confident, we won't give you any help this time. You'll have to rely on yourself. The only thing I can do is to back you up. Do whatever you want. If anything happens, we will take care of it for you." Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He felt that the mission to Shantai County was not that simple, but he still said firmly, "Yes." As they spoke, they had already walked out of the palace gate. Eunuch Gao sent Leng Shiqi back. When Leng Shiqi returned to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters, the first thing he did was to call He Feiqian over and give him a simple and direct order. 3 things. First, help me contact the Dark Thunder Manor in the Western Desolate Prefecture's Northern Prefecture. Second, find out information about the star race. The more detailed, the better. Third, immediately gather everyone and get ready. We will head to Shantai County tomorrow to eliminate the Extermination Thunder Alliance. The biggest reason why he wanted to contact the West Wilderness County was that he had no money. Leng Shiqi could be said to be rich. However, after going to the auction, not only did he spend all the system coins, but he also spent most of his spiritual stones. Later, he found an alchemist to refine the awakening pill, and paid a large amount of spiritual stones. In the dragon vein, he used the yin and yang spirit gathering array for 10 days. The amount of spiritual stones consumed was also very terrifying. So, until now he only had a few thousand spiritual stones left. Leng Shiqi wanted to quickly contact Guan Feihong and the others to get some spiritual stones and resources. After half a year, the Dark Thunder Hall in the North Wilderness must have accumulated a large amount of resources. Leng Shiqi also knew that the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters had a teleportation array. The teleportation array could not only teleport people but also items. In fact, the teleportation array was more often used to transport goods quickly. Compared to teleporting people, the cost was much lower and the distance was much farther. As for the information about the Star Tribe, it was closely related to his own bloodline. Of course, he had to find out more about it. However, when He Feiqian heard about the star race, his entire body trembled. With a slightly surprised expression, he said, "My lord, the star race is a taboo of the falling star continent." Leng Shiqi glanced at He Feiqian. He seemed to know something about the Star Tribe. "Tell me about it." He Feiqian paused for a moment. Didn't everyone in the continent know about the Star Tribe? However, since his lord had asked him to speak, he had to speak. "My lord, the reason why our continent is called the Falling Star Continent is because our human race, under the leadership of the Four Saints, worked together to overthrow the brutal rule of the Star Clan and regain a new life. That's how we got our name. According to historical records, this continent was called the Star Glory Continent hundreds of thousands of years ago, and the owner of the continent was the Star Clan. There were very few people from the Star Tribe, but every one of them had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. They called themselves gods. At that time, we humans were just slaves, and our lives were in the hands of others. This situation has been going on for countless years. Later on, the Four Saints rose up and destroyed the Star Clan with their power. They took back control of the continent and changed the name to the Falling Star Continent. That's right, the Four Saints' spiritual region on the world ranking list is the place of inheritance left behind by the Four Saints. It's respected by tens of thousands of people. After hearing this, Leng Shiqi remembered that the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Six Directions spiritual region had indeed mentioned the Star Clan during the bet. However, he did not pay much attention to it at that time. Now, it seemed that the Star Clan was the public enemy of the entire continent. If others knew that he had the bloodline of the Star Clan, What would happen? Perhaps all the spirit cultivators in the continent would come after him. This made him secretly decide that this secret must not be known to anyone. However, it also proved that the Star Clan was indeed terrifying. If he could make full use of the bloodline of the Star Clan, his strength would definitely increase greatly. It was a pity that the Star Clan had been destroyed hundreds of thousands of years ago. It was impossible for anyone in this world to know about using the bloodline of the Star Clan. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was shocked. He had two bloodlines in his body. One was related to the Nether Temple of the Yin Yang Hall and the Nether Temple, while the other came from the Star Clan that was the master of the continent hundreds of thousands of years ago. Then what was the identity of his body? One must know that the power of the bloodline had been eliminated tens of thousands of years ago. No one knew the reason, but it was certain that there was no one who had the bloodline now. However, this body actually had two bloodlines at the same time. Even Lung Shiqi felt that it was too unbelievable. It also made him re-examine his identity for the first time. He had transmigrated halfway. Then, who was this body before entering the Blood Fog Island? Who were his birth parents? What was so special about him? All in all, this body was definitely not simple. The answer to this question was probably only known by the higher-ups of the Blood Robe Pavilion. However, they would definitely not say it out easily. Therefore, it was necessary for him to investigate in secret. The headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards must have some secrets about the Star Clan. You should also pay attention to it. There's no rush now. Now, the top priority is to contact the Western Wilderness Prefecture and make preparations for tomorrow's departure. Lung Shiqi collected his thoughts and said, "Yes, I'll do it right away." Yifeichen turned and left. "Wait." Lung Shiqi suddenly stopped him and asked, "Has Senior Huang finished his closed-door training?" Speaking of this, Yifeichen's face lit up with joy. "I almost forgot that Senior Huang has finished his closed-door training and condensed the spiritual crystal. He is preparing to cultivate the Gang Spirit Realm, and then he can officially enter the Gang Spirit Realm. It's really a success." Lung Shiqi didn't hide his joy. To be honest, even with the crystallization pill, he was actually not very optimistic about Senior Huang's success. After all, he was too old and had many hidden injuries. Now that he had condensed the crystallization pill, it was not difficult for him to break through the Gang Spirit Realm. He also had a powerful Gang Spirit Realm practitioner in his hands. "Let's go. Take me to see Senior Huang first." Under Yifeichen's guidance, the two of them arrived at Elder Huang's residence. When Elder Huang saw Lung Shiqi, he said with a grateful expression, "My lord, this lowly servant was fortunate enough to not fail you. This old bag of bones is willing to follow your orders." Stepping into the Gang Spirit Realm at his age was not only a transformation of cultivation, but also a lot of longevity. Lung Shiqi saved his life in a disguised way. He was completely willing to submit to Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi smiled and said, "Congratulations, Senior Huang. However, condensing the Gang Spirit is also the key to breaking through the Gang Spirit Realm. I don't know if Senior Huang still remembers that I once said that I would help you." Senior Huang remembered that Lung Shiqi did say this. He also remembered that Lung Shiqi had mastered the horrible power of flame. If he could use it as a medium to condense the Gang Spirit, the power would definitely be much stronger than ordinary Gang Spirit. Chapter 542. At noon the next day, Lung Shiqi brought Sulwan and Feng Xiaomo to the training field of the 29th Guard. Sulwan's face was covered by a thin veil, but even so, it couldn't hide her devastating beauty. Feng Xiaomo, on the other hand, didn't have anything to hide. His burned face was revealed, making him look incomparably malevolent. At this moment Yifeichen, Elder Huang, and the other 15 combat Thunder Guards were ready to go, but when they saw Sulwan and Feng Xiaomo, they were all stunned. Lung Shiqi pointed at the two and said, "Our mission this time is very difficult. Lady Susu and Feng Xiaomo's cultivation aren't weak, and can be considered two great helpers." He was right. Sulwan was at the 8th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm, and her true battle strength was definitely not weaker than the peak of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Not to mention Feng Xiaomo, his full strength was close to the late stage of the Spirit Astral Realm. In the eyes of Heifeichen and the others, the two of them were also rare powerful forces, but this didn't conform to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards. The two of them weren't Dark Thunder Guards, and could only be considered Lung Shiqi's servants. It didn't make sense to bring the two of them to carry out the mission. But no one said anything. First of all, no one dared to stand out and question Lung Shiqi. Moreover, the addition of two experts would make the mission easier. Maybe they could come back with their lives intact, so why not? Seeing that no one had any objections, Lung Shiqi waved his hand and brought everyone to the interdomain teleportation formation of the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. Shantai County was located in a remote area, and the spiritual energy was thin. Whether it was strength or resources, it was at the bottom of the 36 counties of the Thunder Flame dynasty. There were no top sects here, only a few first-rate sects, and their strength wasn't very strong, so the discipline department of Shantai County was very idle. But the Dark Thunder Guards were the opposite. Because of the lack of cultivation resources in Shantai County, whether it was spirit cultivation sects, small organizations, or rogue cultivators, they never stopped attacking each other. Spirit cultivation sects were a bit better. After all, they all had their own territory, and there would only be a little friction between them. Once there was a big movement, the discipline department would come out to mediate, so it was a bit more stable. However, those small organizations and rogue cultivators were not so easy to restrain. They caused trouble everywhere, changing places after a shot. Some of them even became bandits. The city lords only knew how to sweep the snow in front of their door, and these messy things fell into the hands of the Dark Thunder Guards. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai County were very busy. They carried out missions all year round, and the danger was very high. They often had to fight with others, and the casualty rate was also very high. In addition, Shantai Commandery was already lacking in resources, so the treatment of the Dark Thunder Guards was not very good. They lived with their lives on the line, and could not exchange for the corresponding remuneration. This led to complaints within the Dark Thunder Guards. Perhaps this was also the reason why Great Supervisor Su Jun would betray the Dark Thunder Guards. And some time ago, Su Jun's defection caused the Dark Thunder Guards to suffer heavy casualties, which was a huge blow to them, causing the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai Prefecture to lose face. They also wanted to do their best to destroy the Thunder Extermination Alliance, but they still couldn't find the headquarters of the Thunder Extermination Alliance. They were disgraced and became the laughingstock of Shantai County. They couldn't raise their heads in front of others. They had no choice but to ask for help from the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards again, hoping to destroy the Thunder Extermination Alliance as soon as possible. But what they didn't expect was that this matter had become a game between the two supervisors. It was really a fight between immortals, and mortals suffered. At this time, in the conference hall of the Dark Thunder Mansion of Shantai County, four people were sitting with gloomy faces. Sitting at the top was a haggard middle-aged man named Chao Peng, who was the temporary supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai County. After the previous supervisor was forced to retire, he temporarily replaced him and worked hard day and night. Even though he had the cultivation of the peak of Gang Spirit Realm, he was also getting haggard day by day. "Your Excellency Chao, what did you just say?" A slightly greasy uncle below him asked with some disbelief. "Alas, I said Supervisor Li hinted that I couldn't give any help to the 29th Guards, no matter manpower or intelligence." Chao Peng was also very helpless. When he learned that it was the 29th Guards who came to wipe out the Thunder Extermination Alliance this time, he had a bad feeling in his heart. Recently, there was a lot of breaking news about the new supervisor of the 29th Guards, Lu Xingji. He was not only the chief of this elite meeting, but also the pro-disciple of eunuch Gao. Within a few days of entering the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, he had killed and captured masters in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm one after another. Chao Peng should have been happy that such a person led the team to wipe out the Thunder Extermination Alliance, but the person who arranged the 29th Guards was Li Jueqing. As was known to all, Li Jueqing and eunuch Gao had always been at odds with each other, and their open and secret fights had never stopped. This time, it was obvious that the two of them were secretly fighting. Chao Peng was involved in it for no reason. Especially last night, Li Jueqing personally sent him a message that he couldn't give any help when Leng Shiqi arrived. Otherwise, his temporary supervisor would be finished. But if Chao Peng really did so, Eunuch Gao would definitely not let him go. On one side was Supervisor Li, on the other side was Eunuch Gao. He couldn't afford to offend either of them. He really couldn't make up his mind about such a big thing, so he had to find the remaining 3 supervisors to discuss and figure out a way. If things went wrong, the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai Prefecture would probably face a big purge. So now, the 4 of them were grasshoppers on the same rope. The greasy uncle also sighed deeply and said, "Why are we so unlucky to get involved in all kinds of bad things?" In the final analysis, it's Su Jun's fault. He was always so submissive. Who would have thought that he would betray us? Zuiqi, don't complain. Just think about what we should do. The dark-skinned young man sitting opposite him said impatiently. What else can we do? We can only avoid offending both sides. It's easy to say. Let me ask you, when Lu Xingji comes and asks us to help, will you give it to him or not? If we give it to him, we will offend Supervisor Gao. If we don't, we will offend Supervisor Li. Do you mean that we have to choose a chief steward to surrender? I didn't say that. Anyway, we have to figure out a way. A way. After talking for so long, isn't it still nonsense? The more they talked, the more they couldn't come up with a good idea. Gradually, they became agitated. Enough. Chao Peng suddenly felt a splitting headache. He quickly stopped the few of them. Lu Xingji hasn't arrived yet, and we are already in a mess. What? Report. Suddenly, an anxious Dark Thunder Guard ran in and shouted in panic, "Sirs, someone outside wants to see you. He said he is the supervisor of the 29th Guards, Lu Xingji." What? The 4 of them stood up at the same time and exclaimed, "How could he come so quickly?" Valentine's Day update funny. Chapter 543. Leng Shiqi stood outside Dark Thunder Manor in Shantai Prefecture with his hands behind his back. He had led Guard 29, Sulwan, and Feng Shamo through the inter-province teleportation formation. However, Shantai Prefecture was remote and didn't have any inter-province teleportation formations, so they could only teleport to the neighboring prefecture. It would take at least 10 days to get to Shantai Prefecture from there, but Leng Shiqi had already arrived 3 days after they left. He had naturally teleported here using the Fate ability. The rest of the people were still on their way. He had come early because he was afraid that Shantai Prefecture's Dark Thunder Guards would play some tricks. He wanted to catch them off guard. Sure enough, Chao Peng, Zuiqi, and the other 2 walked over with panicked expressions. These 4 people were all grade inspectors or acting inspectors. They could be considered to be in a high position, so they definitely wouldn't panic on a normal day. However, they had been caught between Eunuch Gao and Supervisor Li. Just as they were discussing how to deal with the situation, Leng Shiqi suddenly arrived, causing them to panic even more. The 4 arrived at the entrance and saw Leng Shiqi. They had all seen Leng Shiqi's image before and recognized him immediately. Chao Peng stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Inspector Liu, you've come quickly. Please come in." Chao Peng was an acting inspector. His position wasn't lower than Leng Shiqi's, so he treated him as an equal. Unexpectedly, Leng Shiqi coldly said, "Kneel." Chao Peng's body immediately stiffened. He seemed to be absent-minded for a moment. Then anger flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Lord Liu, what is the meaning of this? It's true that my Dark Thunder Guards are weak, but we won't bow and bend our knees." He had been thinking about how to choose between Supervisor Gao and Supervisor Li. But now that he saw Leng Shiqi's overbearing attitude, he was already leaning toward Supervisor Li. Zuiqi and the other 2 behind him were also secretly angry. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything. Instead, he took out a token. It was an Imperial Eunuch token. Seeing the order, Chao Peng and the other 3 turned pale with fright. According to rank, an inner supervisor was half a rank higher than a patrol inspector. Even an official patrol inspector would have to be polite when meeting an inner supervisor, let alone a temporary patrol inspector like Chao Peng. If Leng Shiqi told him to kneel, he would kneel. Chao Peng's expression immediately changed. According to the intelligence, The person who came was clearly just an inspector, but why did he have an imperial supervisor token? He quickly thought of someone, Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao must be the one who gave the imperial supervisor order. He wanted to temporarily take over the power of the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai County. If Chao Peng handed over his authority, then he would have completely offended General Manager Li, and the consequences would be unimaginable. However, there was also a matter that gave Chao Peng a headache. Should he kneel or not? From an official's position, he should kneel, but if he kneeled, it would be the same as admitting defeat. If Leng Shiqi wanted to take over his authority, then he would have no leeway. Just as he was struggling, Leng Shiqi suddenly smiled, like a family member who hadn't come home for a long time. His smile was so bright. I was just joking, don't take it seriously. Pooh. Chao Peng almost choked to death with a mouthful of old blood. His face was also a bit red. This humble one is Chao Peng, temporarily acting as an inspector. These people are Zuiqi, Wenren Cheng and Shiqing. He bowed to Leng Shiqi and introduced the three great inspectors. Leng Shiqi greeted them warmly. Compared to the cold and indifferent attitude he had before, it was as if he was a completely different person. This made the four of them unsure of Leng Shiqi's personality. They invited Leng Shiqi into the discussion hall and let him sit at the top. Chao Peng consciously sat below. Leng Shiqi saw the four people secretly giving each other glances. He laughed in his heart. It seemed like it was wise for him to come early. He asked, Lord Chao, when I came in, I saw that there were many Dark Thunder Guards here. Everyone knows that the 29 guards under me have just been reorganized and have limited manpower. The Thunder Destruction Alliance is getting stronger day by day, so... He purposely dragged out his words. Chao Peng's back was instantly covered in a layer of cold sweat. The thing he was most afraid of still came. It came so quickly that he didn't even have time to think of what to do. Luckily, there were people peeking in from outside, as if they had something to report. Chao Peng seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He shouted, What are you doing? Can't you see that we're in the middle of a discussion? The Dark Thunder Guard raised a dark red invitation and hesitantly said, Lords, not long after you came in, a disciple of the Benevolence Pavilion sent an invitation to the 100 Sect Martial Competition. Please take a look. 100 Sect Martial Competition? Chao Peng thought for a moment. There really was such a thing in Shantai County recently, and the scale was not small. He secretly glanced at Leng Shiqi, stepped forward to receive the invitation and said, Got it, you can leave. Then he opened the invitation and explained, Lord Lu, this is your first time in Shantai County, so you might not know about the 100 Sect Martial Competition. The moment he opened his mouth, he started to talk about the origin of the 100 Sect Martial Competition. At the same time, he was also trying to buy time for the other three to think of a way. The 100 Sect Martial Competition is organized by the Benevolence Pavilion, a special power. It is held once every 5 years, and it is already the 10th time. The reason why the Benevolence Pavilion is special is because, strictly speaking, this power is not considered a spirit cultivator sect, but an organization without any restrictions. There are no official disciples inside, and as long as one has the Benevolence Writ, they are considered a member of this power. The Benevolence Pavilion can digest a large amount of resources on their own, and take what they need. As long as you pay the corresponding price, you can even get a high-level cultivation technique. Many of the higher-ups or disciples of the spirit cultivator sects have joined the Benevolence Pavilion, so the Benevolence Pavilion has the qualifications and power to organize the 100 Sect Martial Competition. Since Lord Lu is here, why don't you take a look? This can be considered a rare occasion in Shantai County. Chao Peng said a lot in one breath, but Leng Shiqi was not interested. What did this have to do with him? However, he could tell that Chao Peng was stalling for time, so he did not interrupt. He wanted to see what other tricks the four of them could come up with. Chao Peng secretly glanced at the other three, and realized that they were like ants on a hot pan, and their minds were in a mess. They could not be counted on. Lord Lu, the 100 Sect Martial Competition will also invite many famous people in Shantai County. It would be good for us to go and make friends with them. Who knows, we might even be able to find out some information about the Thunder Extermination Alliance. For example, this year's competition will be. Chao Peng continued, and when he saw the first name on the invitation, his eyes lit up. He immediately knelt down and said loudly, "Lord Lu, please listen to me." Chapter 544. Chao Peng's sudden action startled Zhuo Qi and the other two. Even Leng Shiqi was surprised. He knew what Chao Peng was going to say next was the main point. "Why aren't you kneeling?" Chao Peng yelled at the three. After everyone knelt, Chao Peng said, "My lord, to be honest, last night Chief Steward Li Jucheng personally ordered me to do something." When he said this, Zhuo Qi and the other two looked terrified. Was Chao Peng crazy? How dare he say this? Is that so? Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then tell me what it is. It's like this. Chief Steward Li wants us to not be of any help to my lord. Chao Peng seemed to have used all his strength to finish this sentence. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He looked at Chao Peng and secretly thought that someone who could become an inspector was not simple. He asked, "Then why are you telling me this? Do you know that if Chief Steward Li finds out, you won't just lose your posts?" He was right. Chao Peng and the other three were thinking the same thing. Chief Steward Li's bad temper was well known. If this matter was exposed, the four of them would probably become dead men. Chao Peng took a deep breath and said, "Your humble servant's words carry little weight. We do not dare to get involved in the game between the two head chiefs. So I can only tell you frankly that all the Dark Thunder Guards in Shantai County cannot be mobilized by my lord." Zhuo Qi and the other two's eyes almost popped out. Even if Chao Peng was going to do this, he couldn't say it out loud. Wasn't this courting death? But Chao Peng's tone changed. "But I can help my lord find a way to get more people from other places." Leng Shiqi stared at Chao Peng with interest. At this time, Chao Peng's face was covered in sweat. He was staking everything on this one throw. Regardless of whether it was Li Juecheng or Eunuch Gao, he could not afford to offend either of them. Since that was the case, he had to satisfy both sides. He could prevent Leng Shiqi from using the Dark Thunder Guards, but he could use other methods to get some of the power. This was indeed a way to get the best of both worlds. Zhuo Qi and the other two also secretly gave him a thumbs up. However, there was still one key point, and that was whether Leng Shiqi agreed or not. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards of Shantai County were not weak. 4 of them were in the gang spirit realm, so they were powerful enough. The meeting hall instantly quieted down, leaving only the heavy breathing of a few people. They were all waiting for Leng Shiqi's reply. Out of habit, Leng Shiqi tapped the armrest of the chair with his finger, increasing the psychological pressure on the others. After a full 30 minutes, he opened his mouth and said, "Get up first and tell me the details." Hearing this, Chao Peng and the other 3 felt as if they had been granted amnesty. He said with joy, "Thank you for your understanding, Your Excellency." Please look at the names of the distinguished guests at the bottom of the invitation, especially the first one. Leng Shiqi took the invitation and saw that there were indeed 2 rows of distinguished guests at the bottom. Chao Peng was among them, but he was ranked 4th. And the first one was the Slaughtering King. The Slaughtering King's real name is Lei Haoge. He is the 7th son of His Majesty, Chao Peng explained. Leng Shiqi snorted. He is an idle prince who is not valued. Your Excellency is wise. Leng Shiqi had originally thought that the Slaughtering King was from the same generation as His Majesty, but when Chao Peng said that he was actually the 7th prince, Leng Shiqi knew that the Slaughtering King was not well received. If a prince was made king, it would be a great honor. It meant that His Majesty valued him very much. But if he was made king and given land, the nature of the matter was completely different. Since he was given his own land, it meant that the Slaughtering King was no longer destined for the throne. That was why Leng Shiqi was so sure that the Slaughtering King was a disdained prince. Chao Peng continued, however, the Slaughtering King is not content with being an idle prince. He came to Shantai County when he was a teenager, and it has been 7 or 8 years since then. He has never stopped cultivating spirit cultivators. Especially in the last 2 or 3 years, he has been in close contact with third-rate sections. It is clear that he has some ambition. It is because of this that this lowly subordinate thought of using the slaughtering king. Hearing the words using the slaughtering king, Leng Shiqi's mind raced. Chao Peng's meaning was clear. He wanted Leng Shiqi and the slaughtering king to work together against the Thunder Extermination Alliance. This way, Leng Shiqi would be able to complete his mission, and the slaughtering king would be able to raise his reputation. It was a win-win situation. However, Leng Shiqi still had two questions. Then how much power does the slaughtering king have? If it's just a bunch of crooked melons, then forget it. Also, what makes you think that he will work with me? My lord, please listen to me. Chao Peng already had an idea. The slaughtering king has an old eunuch by his side. Eunuch he, who is at the peak of the spirit astral realm. Aside from him, there is also a guest at the early stage of the spirit astral realm, and a conservative estimate of 7 or 8 at the spirit aperture realm. In addition, the slaughtering king wants to rope in some third-rate sects, but he has no reputation at all. To be honest, they all look down on the slaughtering king. If he works with my lord to get rid of the Thunder Extermination Alliance, his reputation will soar. That is exactly what he wants. Leng Shiqi tilted his head. It seems that Lord Chao is quite familiar with the slaughtering king. Chao Peng's heart skipped a beat. He laughed dryly. Yes, we have met a few times, haha. Leng Shiqi didn't want to get involved in Chao Peng's private affairs. What you said is not impossible, but the slaughtering king must agree to work with me and obey my orders. Otherwise, there is no need to talk about it. You will also have to hand over the Dark Lightning Guards. Do you understand? This humble servant understands. This humble servant will go see the slaughtering king tomorrow. No. Leng Shiqi shook his head. I want to go with you. Chao Peng had said so much, so it was better to see for himself. If the slaughtering king's subordinates were a bunch of good-for-nothings, then there was no point in working with him. Chao Peng guessed Leng Shiqi's thoughts and didn't refuse. At this point, Leng Shiqi laughed again. His laughter sent chills down the spines of Chao Peng and the others. In reality, Leng Shiqi could completely ignore Chao Peng and the others' concerns, and directly use the internal supervisor token to take control of the Dark Lightning Guards. Even if Chao Peng and the others couldn't move, with a large number of Spirit Aperture Realm experts involved, the mission would be much easier. And the reason he had agreed to work with Chao Peng and the Slaughtering King was because he had gone through so much trouble. If you want to live peacefully in the conflict between the two grand managers, fine. But as the saying goes, spend money to avoid disaster. You should understand what I mean. Chapter 545. At this moment, the Slaughtering King Lei Haoge was rubbing his temples in the Slaughtering King's manor in Shantai County. He had been exiled to the remote Shantai County when he was a teenager, far away from the center of power in the imperial capital. It had been a few years since then. The princes in the imperial capital were all preparing to fight for the throne, and the forces behind them were growing stronger by the day. Some of them had even monopolized power in the imperial capital. Meanwhile, he himself was wasting his time in this remote village. His cultivation progressed slowly, and his forces did not improve at all. This made him, a young man in his 20s, feel like an old man. In reality, he could not be blamed for not living up to expectations. Although he was born in the imperial family, his life was indeed a little short compared to the other princes. His birth mother's identity was not ordinary either. She was the daughter of a general, and her name was known throughout the world. However, not long after Lei Haoge was born, the Thunderfire dynasty and the Starfall dynasty had a conflict, and the Thunderfire dynasty was defeated. The main reason for their defeat was that someone had leaked military secrets, and that person was Lei Haoge's grandfather. Regardless of whether this was true or not, Lei Haoge and his mother were still implicated in the end. His birth mother could not bear the humiliation and committed suicide. Lei Haoge was chased out of the imperial capital before he even reached adulthood, which led to his current situation. Ai Hidei, do you think I should give up? Even being an idle prince for the rest of my life is not bad. Lei Haoge said to the old eunuch beside him with a worried expression. The old eunuch Hidei was the only protection his birth mother had left him. Hidei was actually not very old. He was only 40 or 50 years old, but judging from his appearance, he looked to be in his 70s or 80s. It was said that Hidei had followed Lei Haoga's birth mother in the great general's manner. Later on, he even castrated himself to continue protecting her. It was because of this that something went wrong with his cultivation technique, which greatly reduced his lifespan. It could be said that Hidei had single-handedly raised Lei Haoga. His feelings for Lei Haoga could not be described with just a few words. When he saw Lei Haoga like this, he hurriedly said, "Your Highness, please don't think like this. Since ancient times, the battle for the throne has not been something you can withdraw from just because you want to. Even if you want to be an idle prince for the rest of your life, I'm afraid that others will not agree. In the future, no matter who ascends to the throne, everyone else will be eliminated. Your Highness, as the current 7th prince, will definitely be on the list. Unless you become a complete cripple, without the slightest bit of threat to the other party, then you can barely keep your life. But are you willing to be a cripple?" Lei Haoga shook his head. No one wanted to be trash, but compared to the other brothers, he was indeed a bit of trash. There was nothing he could do about it. He had been kicked to Shantai County early on. He had no resources and no connections. The cultivation of his forces was very slow. He could not be compared to those princes in the imperial capital. However, Hidei said, "Your Highness, don't worry. Those sects have already begun to waver. As long as they submit, we will have a foundation. In the future, our forces will only develop faster and faster." Only then did Lei Haoga's complexion improve slightly. However, at this moment, a servant ran in and said, "Your Highness, the acting Dark Thunder Guard of Shantai County, Chao Peng, and the inspector from the imperial capital Lu Xingji, request an audience." Lei Haoga and Hidei looked at each other, and a trace of doubt flashed through their eyes. They were familiar with Chao Peng. They had secretly tried to rope him in, but his attitude was not very clear. As for the name Lu Xingji, it sounded very unfamiliar. Lei Haoga had never heard of it at all. However, they were not unfamiliar with the title of inspector. He was a real power figure in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard. Why did he come here? Hidei was suddenly surprised and said, "I think I've heard of Lu Xingji before. It was just a few days ago. He seems to be this year's Elite Association's chief, and was even taken in by Eunuch Gao as his disciple. He is the most dazzling genius in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard." Lei Haoga was also surprised when he heard this. So Lu Xingji is really an extremely rare talent. But why did he come to Shantai County? Why did he come to find me? Your Highness, this is a good opportunity. If such a talent can be accepted by Your Highness, the benefits will be beyond imagination. Hidei was more farsighted. But how could he? "Well, I should give it a try," Lei Haoga ordered. "Go and invite them to the reception room." They walked to the reception room. Lei Haoga asked, "Hidei, what else do you know about Lu Xingji? Tell me all about it." "I don't know much. It is said that he is very powerful. When he was in the middle stage of the spiritual aperture realm, he could kill a master in the middle stage of the gang spirit realm." "How could it be?" Lei Haoga exclaimed. He didn't even dare to imagine that Lu Xingji could kill a master in a higher realm. "Eunuch," he continued. "Not only that, Your Highness, do you know who he killed?" Lei Haoga vaguely felt that it was not simple. Hidei looked dignified. The one he killed was also the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guard, Wei Xiangming. "What? He dared to kill the inspector? He was one of us." Lei Haoga was also frightened by Leng Shiqi's crazy actions. "Who said he wasn't? But he is still alive and well, so this Lu Xingji is extremely crazy. I don't know why he came to Your Highness. Your Highness, you should be careful with your words later." "Got it." Lei Haoga hadn't completely digested the information about Lu Xingji when they arrived at the reception room. Seeing the two coming out of the reception room, Leng Shiqi and Chao Peng stood up and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." "Greetings, Your Highness." Their reactions were completely different. Chao Peng half knelt on the ground, while Leng Shiqi just cupped his hands. Although scene and scene seemed similar, there was a great deal of difference. Leng Shiqi's words and actions immediately made Lei Haoga and Eunuch's faces turn ugly. They looked at Chao Peng. As the acting inspector, he had to kneel in front of the slaughtering king. Why didn't he kneel? Even if Lei Haoge was a prince who was disliked, he was still a prince. This was the difference between a ruler and a subject. For Leng Shiqi to speak to the slaughtering king, as if he was talking to an equal, meant that he didn't care about Lei Haoge at all. Chao Peng's heart clenched. He raised his head to look at Leng Shiqi. He didn't know what Leng Shiqi was doing, but they were here to ally with him. At the very least, he should be polite. Moreover, as subjects, they still had to abide by the rules that they should abide by. He Dai said in a low voice, "Lord Lu, is it? As a member of the imperial court, you should know best how inferior the exalted one is. Do you think the slaughtering king is someone you can offend? Hurry up and kneel." Leng Shiqi didn't seem to care. He spread his hands and said, "Eunuch, you're mistaken. Please forgive me for being blunt, but this useless prince who lives in a remote corner of the country, and who knows when he will be eliminated. It's fine if I don't kneel." As soon as he said this, the living room immediately fell into silence. Chapter 546. How dare you? After a moment of silence, He Dai furiously attacked. Using his palm as a knife, a gust of ghastly gang qi burst out. A gust of chilly wind whistled in the meeting hall, making one's hair stand on end. As the gang qi approached, Leng Shiqi clenched his fist, and a dazzling holy light burst out. A bright Buddha lotus as tall as a man appeared, forcing the evil spirit to retreat. As soon as the Buddha lotus appeared, the ghastly gang qi dissipated like snow under the scorching sun. If Leng Shiqi hadn't entered the dragon vein, he would have had a hard time dealing with He Dai, who was at the peak of gang spirit realm. But now Leng Shiqi was not only at the half-step gang spirit realm, but also had opened up all the spirit meridians and spirit cavities in his body. The increase in power was definitely unprecedented. Therefore, he easily resolved He Dai's attack. He Dai looked at the bright Buddhist lotus with a strong sense of fear in his eyes. In addition, he clearly remembered that Leng Shiqi's cultivation should be at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm, but now he was clearly at the half-step gang spirit realm. The speed of his progress was shocking. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to offend such a genius, but he still said coldly, "I've long heard of Lord Lu's outstanding strength. Today, I see that you live up to your reputation. No matter how strong you are, as a mere envoy inspector, you can't insult the slaughtering king. Today, even if I have to risk my life, I won't let you leave the slaughtering king's residence." He Dai pulled out a dagger from his sleeve, looking like he was going to risk his life. Leng Shiqi shook his head slightly. "Eunuch, there's no need to be so angry. The Starfall continent has always respected strength. I'm not bragging, but in the slaughtering king's residence, only you can make me take you seriously. As you said, you have to risk your life to keep me, a mere envoy inspector, here. It's obvious that the slaughtering king's residence's strength is hard to respect. If you want others to respect you must have strength, and I can help you win fame and respect." Eunuch's dagger almost stabbed out. Hearing this, he paused and looked at Leng Shiqi suspiciously. However, he didn't intend to attack again. Chao Peng was already drenched in cold sweat. He never dreamed that Leng Shiqi would use this method to propose cooperation. Logically speaking, Leng Shiqi should be more aware of his position if he was looking for someone to work with. However, Leng Shiqi had directly challenged the slaughtering king's authority. What was this? Just a moment ago, he thought he was going to die here. He thought to himself that the thoughts of a genius were indeed not something a mortal like him could understand. It was also the first time that Lei Haoge and Eunuch had met someone like Leng Shiqi who didn't play by the rules. The reason why Leng Shiqi did this was, of course, to show his strength and potential, and to fully demonstrate his value. At the same time, it also pointed out the biggest problem the Slaughtering King's Manor currently faced: their lack of strength. The Slaughtering King's Manor seemed to be comparable to an ordinary second-rate sect, but it was still far from being comparable to the princes of the imperial capital. For example, the 13th prince he saw at the auction. His guards were all at unity with the world, and his maidservants were all at the spirit aperture realm. A single guard from the 13th prince could wipe out the entire Slaughtering King's Manor. The difference between them was simply too great. Leng Shiqi's actions were simple and straightforward. He didn't have to say a lot of things, and the others wouldn't believe him. Eunuch, he turned his gaze to Lei Haoge. Naturally, this kind of decision should be made by the slaughtering king. Lei Haoge waved his hand to signal Eunuch to stop. His face was gloomy as he said, "Sir Lu, you must have some tricky mission since you've come all the way to Shantai County." Leng Shiqi saw that Lei Haoge wasn't as useless as the rumors made him out to be. He didn't hide anything and said, "That's right. My mission is to eliminate the Thunder League." The Thunder League. Lei Haoge had been hearing this name a lot recently. The Thunder League had caused quite a commotion recently, and this was the second time the Dark Thunder Guard had made a move. Chao Ping knew that it was time for him to take the stage. He coughed dryly to draw everyone's attention, then began to explain the pros and cons of the matter. "Slaughtering King, this is a win-win situation. We can definitely work together." Hidei seemed to have noticed something and secretly transmitted a few words to Lei Haoge. Lei Haoge immediately sneered. "Lord Chao, with your strength and the 29th Guard Squad, dealing with the Thunder League shouldn't be a problem, right? However, it seems like you don't plan on working together." This. Chao Peng wanted to explain, but Leng Shiqi interrupted him. "This is a private matter between me and Lord Chao. I only have one question. Do you agree or not, Slaughtering King? You should know that there are many sects in Shantai County who want to use this opportunity to raise their reputation." Lei Haoge's face darkened. Leng Shiqi was threatening him. However, Leng Shiqi's words were not false. The Thunder League had completely stood on the opposite side of the Thunderblaze dynasty. For those sects that had a close relationship with the dynasty, eliminating the Thunder Destroyer League was also a great merit. They could also earn a lot of prestige. Leng Shiqi indeed had more choices. Hidei's expression tightened. He hurriedly said, "Lord Lu, how much power do you have? If it's still the same level as the 29th Guard Squad, then let's not talk about this cooperation." Last time the 29th Guard Squad came here, they were almost completely wiped out. This was a well-known fact. 15 Battle Thunder Guard elites in the middle and late stages of the Spirit Aperture Realm, a spiritual caster in the early stages of the Astral Spirit Realm, a master in the middle stages of the Astral Spirit Realm, plus me, Leng Shiqi said as he tidied up his sleeves. His tone was very calm, but his words were full of confidence. Hearing this, not only Hidei and Lei Haoge, but even Chao Peng's eyes widened. This kind of combat power was already comparable to the top experts of a second-rate sect. Since when did the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters have such powerful equipment? To tell you the truth, the 29th Guard Squad definitely has the upper hand in terms of combat power. The only problem I feel is that there are too many spiritual Pulse Realm disciples in the Thunder League. It's inevitable that some of them will slip through the net. What the Slaughtering King's mansion needs to do is to encircle and annihilate those spiritual Pulse Realm disciples. You don't need to do much. If you don't want to, there are many sects that are willing to help. Leng Shiqi's tone was full of arrogance. He was pressuring Lei Haoge. Whether it was his identity, potential, strength or power, he was very strong. He was so strong that Lei Haoge had to pay attention to him. The more arrogant and unyielding he was, the more confidence he had. This way, Lei Haoge would be more likely to cooperate with him. If he spoke humbly, it would make Lei Haoge feel that he was not confident enough. Lei Haoge fell silent. At the same time, Hidei continued to transmit messages to him, as if they were discussing something. Leng Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he asked for a cup of tea and leisurely sipped it. After 15 minutes, Lei Haoge gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, this king is willing to cooperate with Lord Lu. Very good. Your Highness, the Slaughtering King has made the right decision. When the time comes, I will send someone to contact you. Farewell." Leng Shiqi saw that the matter was settled and left without hesitation. Chao Peng was still a little dazed. He hurriedly bowed to Lei Haoge before following him out. Hidei watched Leng Shiqi leave with a sigh. This kid is definitely not a fish in a pond. In the future, he will become a major figure who can shake the world. In truth, there was one thing that he kept to himself. Whether it was talent, strength, or shrewdness, Leng Shiqi was far superior to Lei Haoge. He couldn't even compare. He sighed inwardly. Even if Lei Haoge was half as outstanding as Leng Shiqi, he still wouldn't be an idle king here. Outside the slaughtering king's residence, Qiao Peng finally came to his senses. He was naturally delighted. Lord Lu, let's go back and celebrate. No, I still have matters to attend to. I will find you after this. With that, Leng Shiqi left. The place he was heading to was the Blood Cloak Pavilion branch in Shantai Prefecture. Chapter 547. There were large and small hills everywhere in Shantai County. 2 days later, Leng Shiqi changed his appearance and came to a nameless hill. He had gone to the branch of the Blood Cloak Pavilion to inquire about the Thunder Extermination Alliance. Unfortunately, the Blood Cloak Pavilion did not know where the headquarters of the Thunder Extermination Alliance was. The good news was that the branch knew a stronghold of the Thunder Extermination Alliance. In other words, it was on this nameless hill. Leng Shiqi opened his supercilious eyes and soon found the specific location of the stronghold. It was a cave near the cliff, which was really hidden. Judging by the aura of spiritual power, there were about 30 or 40 people in this stronghold. Most of them were in the spiritual pulse realm, several in the spiritual aperture realm, and one in the middle stage of the gang spirit realm. The strength of this stronghold was far stronger than that of an ordinary third-rate sect. It seemed that the Thunder Extermination Alliance was constantly growing during this period. The reason why Leng Shiqi came here was, of course, not to clean up this stronghold. First of all, he was not so arrogant that he could destroy a stronghold by himself. Although he believed that he could do it, someone would definitely escape. At that time he would alert the enemy. He came here mainly to inquire about information. Leng Shiqi was 10 miles away from the cave, observing every move of those people with his supercilious eyes, waiting for an opportunity. If there were no masters in the gang spirit realm, he could use the earth to sneak in and eavesdrop. However, the spirit cultivators in the gang spirit realm had strong perception and could sense the slight fluctuation of spiritual power, so he could only be passive. Until late at night, someone finally came out of the cave. This person walked out of the cave and drilled into a pile of weeds. It seemed that he had to go to the toilet. Leng Shiqi knew that the opportunity had come. When the person just came out of the cave and was about to go to the toilet, he suddenly found several green bugs flying over. What kind of bugs are these? How come I have never seen them before? The person paused for a moment and did not care much. However, he did not expect that the bugs began to dance around him. Normally, he would be happy, but now he had to go to the toilet. It was a little awkward to be surrounded by bugs. He waved his hand and swatted the insects away. This action seemed to have angered the insects. They immediately bared their sharp fangs and pounced on him. Scram! The man impatiently released his spiritual pressure, wanting to directly crush these insects to death. But what was unexpected was that these insects actually ignored his spiritual pressure and pounced on him one after another, fiercely biting him. Although the bug was small, when he bit down on it, the numbing pain caused sweat to form on his face. At the same time, he flew into a rage. Where did this damn bug come from? Just as he was about to catch all the insects in one fell swoop, the insects cleverly turned around and flew away. The man furiously chased after them. At the same time, a man with black and white hair in the cave opened his eyes and looked at the entrance of the cave in confusion. He muttered, "What the hell is Kong Fong doing?" "Lord Su, don't mind him. He likes to make a fuss," a person beside him said submissively. And this person was the great supervisor who betrayed the Dark Thunder Guards, Su Jun. "Let him be." Su Jun continued to close his eyes. Outside the cave, Kong Fong chased after the insects for 2 miles. Just as he was about to catch up, a thick gray fog suddenly appeared in front of him. Before he could react, he saw 2 5-colored streams of light flash through the fog. His eyes suddenly became blurred. "Kneel." Leng Shiqi's voice sounded. Kong Fong didn't hesitate at all, and directly knelt down. He even prostrated himself on the ground as if he was praying to God. This was naturally Leng Shiqi using the 5-God soul intimidation technique to instantly control him. "What's your name?" "Kong Fong." he said sluggishly. Cultivation realm? Spirit pulse realm level 7. What's your identity? When Leng Shiqi asked this question, Kong Feng's expression actually showed some struggle. In the end, he expressionlessly said, Benevolence Pavilion member. And Leng Shiqi's heart became suspicious. Wasn't this a secret stronghold of the Thunder Extermination Union? Why would Kong Feng say that he was a member of the Benevolence Pavilion? He thought about the Benevolence Pavilion that Xiao Peng mentioned before. This power was not purely a spirit cultivator sect. Many sect members were also members of the Benevolence Pavilion. Maybe this Kong Feng was the same. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment and continued to ask, What's your relationship with the Thunder Extermination Union? I'm a disciple of the Thunder Extermination Union. Since he was a disciple of the Thunder Extermination Union, why would he mention the Benevolence Pavilion? Leng Shiqi had an idea. A seemingly absurd idea appeared in his mind. He asked in a deep voice, What's the relationship between the Thunder Extermination Union and the Benevolence Pavilion? Kong Feng's eyes suddenly widened as if he had encountered something extremely terrifying. The blurred look in his eyes also faded a little. Leng Shiqi was also very surprised. His mental strength was extremely strong. It was too easy for him to control Kong Feng, who was in the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. But at this moment, Kong Feng actually showed signs of breaking free from the illusion. It could be seen that this person was extremely afraid of this problem. Humph! Leng Shiqi snorted. His enormous mental strength continued to surge, causing Kong Feng's eyes to become sluggish once again. Only then did he say stiffly, The Thunder Extermination Union is the Benevolence Pavilion. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi could not help but reveal a shocked expression. Although he had similar guesses before, when these words came out of Kong Feng's mouth, it still gave Leng Shiqi a huge shock. The infamous Thunder Extermination Union in Shantai County was actually the world-renowned Benevolence Pavilion. Even if he were to tell others about this, no one would believe him. Thinking about it this way, it was no wonder that the Thunder Extermination Union was able to force the great supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards to defect. It was no wonder that they could hide so perfectly. Under the cover of Su Jun and the Benevolence Pavilion, even the Blood Clothing Pavilion could not find the Thunder Extermination Union's lair. That was because the Thunder Extermination Union's lair was the Benevolence Pavilion. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that in a few days, the 100-sect martial competition held by the Benevolence Pavilion would begin. At that time, there would be many spirit cultivator sects participating, and there would be many distinguished guests. It could be said that the 100-sect martial competition had gathered more than half of the spirit cultivator forces in Shantai County. Would the Benevolence Pavilion, or rather, the Thunder Extermination Union, use this time's 100-sect martial competition to cause some trouble? Or perhaps, this 100-sect martial competition was planned by them. The more he thought about it, the more Leng Shiqi felt that something was amiss. This matter seemed to have exceeded his expectations, and also exceeded the scope of his abilities. Just the 29 guards alone was not enough to deal with this matter. This matter had to be reported as soon as possible. Leng Shiqi asked coldly, What exactly do you want to do at the 100-sect martial competition? I don't know. Kong Feng was only at the Spirit Pulse stage after all, and could not come into contact with the core secrets of the Thunder Extermination Union. Leng Shiqi did not probe further, and then asked Kong Feng a few unimportant questions to dispel the fear in his heart, so as to not reveal any flaws. Go back. Nothing happened tonight. Yes. After settling Kong Feng, Leng Shiqi rushed back to Shantai County's Dark Thunder Manor with his fastest speed to make arrangements. Chapter 548. A few days later, the 100-sect martial competition was held as scheduled. The location was in an empty valley near the Benevolence Pavilion. At this time, the valley was already filled with people. In the center of the valley, there were dozens of huge arenas. Every arena was supported by an array. In the east of the valley, there were 3 levels of white jade thrones. At this time, there were already dozens of people sitting on them. Those who had the qualifications to sit on the highest level were at least the sect leaders or elders of second-rate sections. Those who were not qualified could only sit on the lower 2 levels. In reality, the lower 2 levels had the most people. Although this 100-sect martial meet was called 100 sects, in reality, there were at most 30 to 40 spirit cultivation sects that could participate. Among them, 70% were third-rate sects, and 20% were rogue cultivators. These people could only sit at the lowest level. At this time, Leng Shiqi, Feng Xiaomo and Chao Peng stepped onto the highest level of the Jade platform. Feng Xiaomo and the rest had arrived at Dark Thunder Manor 2 days ago. They did not stay for a moment, and directly came to participate in the 100-sect martial competition. However, Leng Shiqi and Feng Xiaomo did not sit down. Instead, they stood behind Chao Peng. What was worth mentioning was that the two of them purposely hid their cultivation, and only revealed their spirit aperture middle stage cultivation. The two of them did not have an invitation. Fortunately, every VIP could bring 2 people in, so they acted as Chao Peng's subordinates. Chao Peng was currently chatting with the people around him. In reality, when he first found out that Leng Shiqi was coming to participate in the 100-sect martial competition, he was also very suspicious. At that time, although he tried his best to explain to Leng Shiqi how lively the 100-sect martial competition was, it had nothing to do with the Thunder Extermination Union. He was sure that Leng Shiqi would not come. However, it was the exact opposite. Leng Shiqi actually took the initiative to come. Chao Peng was not stupid. He knew that Leng Shiqi's mission was to eliminate the Thunder Extermination Union. How would he have the time to participate in the 100-sect martial competition? He secretly guessed that this 100-sect martial competition might be related to the Thunder Extermination Union. There might even be some accidents. In particular, he had helped Leng Shiqi send a letter to the Slaughtering King, Lei Haoge. Although he did not know the contents of the letter, Leng Shiqi and the Slaughtering King had teamed up to deal with the Thunder Extermination Alliance. Therefore, he was even more certain that the 100-sect martial meeting was related to the Thunder Extermination Alliance. Therefore, even though he appeared to be extremely happy and in high spirits, he was actually still secretly worried that he would not be implicated. With the arrival of the distinguished guests, the atmosphere in the valley became more and more lively. The Slaughtering King has arrived. At this moment, a loud voice rang out. Shua. Everybody's eyes immediately turned to the entrance of the valley. Lei Haoge was walking over steadily, accompanied by eunuch He. There was a warm smile on his face, like a spring breeze, but it looked a little fake, like he was wearing a mask. The organizer of the 100-sect martial meeting, the pavilion master of the Benevolence Pavilion, Chi Lakun, immediately welcomed Lei Haoge with a smile and led him to the head seat of the Jade platform. Even though Lei Haoge was an idle prince and his cultivation was unsightly, his identity was his identity and could not be neglected. But before Chi Lakun could say anything to Lei Haoge, a voice came from outside. Discipline Board's town protector, Lord Jean Rouet has arrived. Hearing this, the valley instantly quietened down. Many people had astonished expressions on their faces. The people from the Discipline Board are here too? So what if the Dark Thunder Guards are here? In any case, we're just here to see them make a fool of themselves. Why are the people from the Discipline Board here? Silence. That's also the town protector Jean Rouet, a great expert at the unity of Heaven realm. Chi Lakun's face also stiffened slightly. It must be said that the Spirit Cultivator sect hated the Dark Thunder Guards the most. However, the reason why he invited the Dark Thunder Guards this time was because the Dark Thunder Guards had made a lot of fools recently. He originally thought that Chao Peng would not come, and the Discipline Board was in existence that was directly opposed to the various large sections. Of course, no one would be happy for them to come to the 100-sect martial meeting. However, Chi Lakun had never invited Jean Rouet, which meant that he came uninvited. Jean Rouet did not come alone. Behind him, there was a youth with a jade crown who was at the first level of the spirit astral realm. He was Zhuge-Puha. Zhuge-Puha was previously the most dazzling genius in Shantai County. Everyone recognized him. Seeing his spirit astral realm aura, they all praised him. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and was slightly surprised. Before coming to Shantai County, Li Jueqing had said that he would contact the Discipline Board to send some people. After Leng Shiqi came to the Dark Thunder Manor, he no longer believed it. Even the Dark Thunder Guards were not allowed to use their own strength, let alone the people from the Discipline Board. However, after he found out that the Thunder Destruction Alliance was the Benevolence Pavilion, he immediately sent a message to Eunuch Gao. He received the news that Eunuch Gao would send experts to help him. But Lung Shiqi did not expect that Eunuch Gao would send people from the Discipline Board. And it was the Discipline Commissioner. As one of the 4 directors of the Dark Thunder Guards, Eunuch Gao certainly had a high position in the Dark Thunder Guards. But he could mobilize the Discipline Commissioner of Shantai County, which was worth pondering. Of course, Lung Shiqi did not want to dig into Eunuch Gao's affairs. Now that Zhang Rui, a grandmaster in the oneness of heaven and men realm, was here, it was a reassuring pill for him. He was more confident about today's plan. Zhuge Puha also saw Lung Shiqi. He had reached the spirit astral realm, and could condense his voice into a line. He transmitted the voice. Brother Liu? I received the task of assisting the 29 guards to wipe out the Thunder Destruction Alliance. I came here alone, but I didn't expect Lord John to take me to the 100 Schools martial competition to see the world. I didn't expect to meet Brother Liu. Lung Shiqi instantly understood. Li Jueqing did not break his promise. He did communicate with the Discipline Board, but he only sent one person over, which was Zhuge Puha. Zhang Rui should know the truth, which was why he brought Zhuge Puha over. Zhang Rui's figure was tall. He wore a set of heavy armor, and his body was filled with killing intent. He was like an experienced general. He shouted, "What? Do you still want me to stand here?" Qi Likun immediately welcomed him with a warm smile. Lord John has come from afar. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Please come in. Zhang Rui snorted and walked towards the jade platform. Every step he took, he would leave a deep imprint on the ground. It was obvious that he did not come with good intentions. This caused many spirit cultivators to be shrouded in a faint shadow. They did not know if Zhang Rui was here to find trouble. When all the guests were seated, Qi Likun stood in the center of the jade platform. He briefly explained the rules of the 100 Schools martial competition, which everyone knew. The rules of the 100 Schools martial competition were to separate the spirit cultivators from the spirit transformation realm, spirit pulse realm and spirit aperture realm. The top 10 of each realm would obtain a large amount of cultivation resources. At the same time, they would obtain the Benevolence Writ and become a member of the Benevolence Pavilion. After a few decades of development, the benefits of the Benevolence Pavilion had increased. There were more and more people who wanted to join, so the Benevolence Writ was what everyone wanted. There were over a dozen stages in the valley. Because the spirit transformation realm had the most people, they took up half of the stages. As for the spirit aperture realm, there were only 2 stages. With Qi Likun's command, the 100 Schools martial competition officially began. One person leaped onto each stage, waiting for others to challenge them. Very quickly, intense battles began one after another. However, this level of battle was boring to Lung Shiqi, so he closed his eyes and rested. Unexpectedly, his actions were secretly noted down by some people. Following the end of each battle, the spectators would burst into cheers and discussions. The entire valley would become lively. In the afternoon, all the battles in the various stages had basically ended. Only the Spirit Aperture Realm stage was left fighting for the last spot. Everyone's attention was attracted to this battle. In the end, the white-robed man won. As expected, Wen Yuqing won. As expected of the genius disciple of the Sky Crane sect. On the jade platform, the elder beside Chao Peng laughed. This person was Elder One of the Sky Crane sect. He glanced at Lung Shiqi, who still had his eyes closed, and said to Chao Peng, "Lord Chao, I see that you have a Spirit Aperture Realm subordinate. Why don't you go up and spar with him?" Chapter 549. Hearing Elder Wan's words, Chao Peng felt a chill on his back. Who was Lu Xingji? He was a madman who had killed an inspector in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. His temper was even more unpredictable. If he really joined the fight, the guy in the arena, who was at the 8th level of Spirit Aperture Realm, might be killed. He turned to look at Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi's eyes were still closed, and he was unmoved. His expression angered Elder One even more. Lord Chao, is your subordinate deaf? Chao Peng trembled slightly. He also knew that Elder One just wanted to laugh at the Dark Thunder Guard, but Elder One himself didn't know that he was causing a huge trouble. Lung Shiqi finally opened his eyes. He didn't want to complicate things, so he said, "Not interested." Elder One saw that he seemed to look down on Wen Yuqing, so he couldn't help but ridicule. "Not interested? I think Wen Yuqing has no interest in fighting with you." Well, I don't want to shame Lord Chao and the Dark Thunder Guard." Hearing this, Chao Peng secretly clenched his fists. Since the previous inspector retired, the Dark Thunder Guard didn't have a master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Now these spirit cultivation sects were getting more and more arrogant. Lung Shiqi tilted his head. He suddenly thought that if he could get a Tianren token, he might be able to get in touch with the inside of the Tianren pavilion, which was a good way. Thinking of this, he motioned to Chao Peng, and then his figure moved. In the blink of an eye, he appeared directly on the arena. His small display of skill made the crowd cry out in surprise, because there were very few people present who could catch his figure. On the arena, Wen Yuqing was enjoying the envious eyes of the crowd, but he didn't expect that his own elder would cause him a big trouble. Elder Wan's expression also became serious. He was at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm, but he just saw a phantom, which showed how fast Lung Shiqi was. He couldn't help but frown. He seemed to have underestimated this person. Chao Peng was also nervous. Of course, he wasn't nervous about whether Lung Shiqi would win. He was worried that Lung Shiqi would kill him. Wen Yuqing was the most outstanding genius of the younger generation in the Sky Crane sect. Back then he had competed with Zhuge Puha. If he died at the hands of Lung Shiqi, it would be a big deal. Wen Yuqing looked at Lung Shiqi, who suddenly appeared in front of him, and also acted as if he was facing a great enemy. Unexpectedly, Lung Shiqi suddenly smiled at him and said, "Don't be nervous, it will be over soon." As soon as he said that, Wen Yuqing's expression became a little unnatural, and the people around him also started to jeer. Where did this brat come from? How dare he speak to Wen Yuqing like that? He seems to be from the Dark Thunder Guards. He looks very unfamiliar. Ha, the Dark Thunder Guards have been stirring up a lot of trouble recently. It seems that there will be a good show today. Lung Shiqi used his fingers as a sword, and a blazing sword energy shot out. Wen Yuqing felt the power of the sword energy and laughed inwardly. Deliberately mystifying. As expected, he exposed his mediocre strength as soon as he attacked. Wen Yuqing also shot out a pure white sword energy. The sword energy was accompanied by a loud crane cry, and its momentum was unparalleled. His sword energy instantly destroyed the blazing sword energy, and directly pierced Lung Shiqi's body. Dead. Everyone was also stunned. He couldn't have died just like that, right? They wanted to see the Dark Thunder Guards make a fool of themselves, but if someone died, they would definitely attract endless anger from the Dark Thunder Guards. Wen Yuqing immediately sensed that something was wrong because his sword energy didn't hit the real body at all. The Lung Shiqi just now was a fake body. Wen Yuqing was shocked, but before he could react, the blazing sword energy had already pierced his back. Pooh. Wen Yuqing immediately spat out a large mouthful of blood. He looked at his wound in disbelief. He still didn't know when Lung Shiqi had run behind him. He couldn't believe that he had died in such a cowardly manner. He still had many life-saving trump cards that he hadn't used. The key was that he never thought that his opponent would kill him. Just like that, Wen Yuqing fell down with boundless unwillingness. Everyone who saw this scene widened their eyes. How was it possible to kill Wen Yuqing in one move? Not only were they shocked by Lung Shiqi's strength, they were even more shocked by his courage. In front of Sky Crane Sect's Elder Wan, he killed Wen Yuqing, the most outstanding genius of the Sky Crane sect. Did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts? What was the background of this person? Moreover, the rules of the 100 Sects martial competition were to stop when it came to a certain point. There had never been a case of someone dying. This was a precedent. Then what would Elder Wan do? Everyone felt that there would be a storm coming. Elder Wan was also startled. How could he have expected that the battle would end so quickly, and the result would be so unexpected? How dare you? Elder Wan roared. He bared his teeth. His hair stood up in anger. His entire body erupted with a powerful pure white true dipper spirit qi, and slashed towards Lung Shiqi. When Chao Peng saw that Lung Shiqi had personally come down, he had already prepared for the worst. The result was as he had expected, so he was already prepared to make a move. He took out a long fan and waved it lightly, causing a storm to rise between heaven and earth, continuously melting the pure white true dipper spirit qi. Elder Wan, you've lost face by attacking a junior, Chao Peng said coldly. Elder Wan was incomparably furious and shouted. Chao Peng scram. Today, I will definitely kill this bastard. You were the one who insisted on letting him take action. In the end, when Yuqing was inferior to him, and you want to take action? It's true that when you beat the young, the old will come. You spirit cultivation sects like this the most. Chao Peng was not afraid at all. Although Lung Shiqi's move had broken the rules, since it had already been done, he had to be tough. He wanted to see who dared to look down on the Dark Thunder Guards. Elder Wan's eyes were full of hatred, and he roared at Lung Shiqi. The battle on the arena has always stopped at a certain point. Why did he want to kill him? Lung Shiqi said indifferently. In my eyes, there has never been a competition. As long as I make a move, there will be blood. Arrogant. Elder One seemed to have gone mad, and he wanted to eat Lung Shiqi alive, but he did not rush up directly, because he was not sure that he could defeat Chao Peng. Chao Peng was at the peak of spirit astral realm, which was higher than Elder Wan's cultivation. Moreover, Elder Wan was old, and his qi and blood had already declined. His battle strength was no longer at its peak, so he was not as good as Chao Peng. And the pavilion master of Benevolence Pavilion. Qi Lakun's expression was also very ugly. Such a big mess had happened at the 100 Sects martial competition. If it was not handled well, the reputation that the Benevolence Pavilion had accumulated over the years would be greatly damaged. The most important thing was that this matter was likely to affect his own important plan today. However, he still had to deal with it. He stood out between Elder Wan and Chao Peng and said, "Both of you, please give me face and stop for the time being." He then transmitted a message to the two of them. Lord Chao, Elder Wan, since it has already happened, we'd better find a chance to sit down and slowly discuss how to solve it. Now that we've made a move in front of so many people, it's really shameful. Elder Wan's heart was bleeding. One Yuqing was the hope of the next generation of Sky Crane sect, and even had the possibility of inheriting the position of sect leader. Now that he was dead, this matter could not be settled easily. Chapter 550. It was a pity that Elder One had only brought a few people this time. It was impossible for them to break through Chao Peng's blockade and kill Lung Shiqi. Just then, Qi Lakun's voice sounded in his ears again. Elder Wan, don't worry. As long as you agree to one of my conditions, I can guarantee that I will help you keep this child and Chao Peng here. Elder Wan, please don't have any emotions. Please listen to me carefully. Everyone waited for Elder Wan's reaction. Whether or not this matter could be temporarily suppressed would depend on his attitude. Elder Wan was silent for a while, then said coldly, I will give face to Pavilion Master Qi. After the 100 Sect martial competition ends, I hope that Master Chao can give me a satisfactory answer. With that, he waved his sleeves and left. A few Sky Crane sect disciples cleaned up Wen Yuqing's corpse and left. Lung Shiqi looked at Wen Yuqing's corpse and sighed in his heart. Back then, he had to use all his strength to kill the heavily injured Li Xianyang. Now he could casually kill a late-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator. Against people with weaker cultivation than him, the remnant wind lightning light steps was abnormally strong. Wen Yuqing did not even have the chance to resist before he died. He raised his head and said to Qi Lakun, Pavilion Master Qi, is it time to give out the rewards? All the spirit cultivators in the valley looked at Lung Shiqi strangely. You're still thinking about the rewards? You're quite magnanimous. Qi Lakun laughed dryly. Haha, of course. Men. With his order, a row of Benevolence Pavilion disciples carried jade plates onto the stage. Each of the jade plates had a mustard seed bag. Lung Shiqi did not hesitate to pick up one of the bags and looked inside. The amount and quality of the resources inside were not much, but it was better than nothing. What he valued the most was the benevolence badge. It was a gilded badge and was very exquisite. There seemed to be a small-scale array inside that could not be replicated. The other people who received the rewards were also overjoyed. Except for Leng Shiqi, everyone else received both fame and resources. Naturally, they were all very happy. At this moment, Jean Rouet stood up and said to the 30 people on the stage, "My Thunderfire dynasty welcomes all of you very much. As long as you are willing to join the Thunderfire dynasty, you can choose from the Discipline Commission or the Dark Lightning Guards. There are also all kinds of cultivation resources. It will definitely be more than what you are getting now." Hearing this, not only were the 30 winners stunned, even the spectators below the stage and the VIPs on the Jade platform were stunned. What did Jean Rouet mean? Poaching in public? This was the 100 sects martial meeting. Moreover, none of these sects had anything to do with the Thunderflame dynasty. For Jean Rouet to come here specifically to poach these sects, this was simply too ridiculous. What was even more ridiculous was that many people were tempted. Compared to staying in a third-rate or second-rate sect, they were far inferior to the Discipline Commission or the Dark Lightning Guards. Not to mention the distribution of resources, just their status alone was enough for people to not dare to provoke them. Although they usually looked down on the people of the Thunderfire dynasty, and were even called the lackeys of the dynasty, in reality, they were more jealous. Because those who could join the Discipline Commission or the Dark Lightning Guards all had good aptitudes, they could also join a second-rate or even a first-rate sect. Therefore, fundamentally speaking, the spirit cultivators at the bottom wanted to join the Thunderfire dynasty, especially since there were many rogue cultivators present. To them, if they could join the Discipline Commission or the Dark Lightning Guards, it would be equivalent to holding an iron rice bowl. It would definitely be better than drifting around. Now that Jean Rouet had given them this opportunity, a few of the 30 people on the stage were tempted. Chi Likun took a step forward to the center of the stage and snorted, "Is your Thunderfire dynasty really so good? The Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards are just the fangs and claws of the Thunderfire dynasty. You really think too highly of yourselves." Jean Rouet's actions just now were already shocking enough, but Chi Likun's words were still shocking. The moment he spoke, everyone was shocked. Originally, when everyone saw Chi Likun walk out, they thought that he would have a war of words with Jean Rouet, but no one would have thought that Chi Likun would say such disgraceful words. In reality, which one of the people present had not said such words in secret? But those were all whispers. But Chi Likun actually dared to slander the Thunderfire dynasty in front of Jean Rouet, Chao Peng, and the Slaughtering King. Was he tired of living? Or was he crazy? From Leng Shiqi killing people on the stage, to Jean Rouet poaching people, to now, it could be said that he had broken everyone's understanding time and time again. In comparison, Leng Shiqi killing Wen Yuqing was no longer a big deal. Did I say anything wrong? Chi Likun ignored everyone's shocked expression and continued. Your Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guard seem to have limitless glory, but think about it, Jean Rouet. Which of the 4 chiefs and the 4 punishment envoys doesn't have the backing of the imperial family or the military? You people can forget about ascending to a high position in your lifetime, because the true power must be grasped by the imperial family. You will forever be nothing more than chess pieces. Everyone looked at Chi Likun with their mouths agape. Some people even felt that they were dreaming. Why did the 100-sect martial competition suddenly cause trouble for the Thunderfire dynasty? Lei Haoge immediately shouted, Chi Likun, you dare to insult the dynasty in public? Are you trying to rebel? Chi Likun sneered. What bullshit Thunderfire dynasty? Everyone think about it. Ever since the Thunderfire dynasty was established, they set up the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards, one in the open and one in the dark, to monitor us at all times. They make us live in fear all the time, for fear that we will be killed if we make a mistake. In the eyes of the Thunderfire dynasty, we are lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Do you really want to be lambs for the rest of your life? Chi Likun said with conviction, his words full of dissatisfaction with the Thunderfire dynasty. Finally, he said to Lei Haoge with a gloomy face, "Lei Haoge, you are right. Today, I am going to rebel." After saying that, his aura rose steadily. He was no longer in the gang spirit realm, but in the unity of heaven and men realm. With a majestic aura, he said loudly, "Everyone, Lei Qingjun is old and will die at any time. His sons only know how to fight for power and profit and plot for the throne. When did they care about our life and death? Today, I, Qi Likun, will rise up and swear an uprising. Our benevolence pavilion is no longer the benevolence pavilion, but the Thunder Extermination League. Anyone who is willing to join us will definitely have a place in the world in the future. Zhan Rui, your appearance is indeed unexpected. However, since you are here today, don't leave." Lei Qingjun was the name of the current emperor. It had been a long time since anyone dared to call him by his name. His words shocked everyone. It turned out that the Thunder Extermination League that had been stirring up trouble recently was actually created by the Benevolence Pavilion. After all this fuss, Qi Likun actually wanted to rebel against the Thunderfire dynasty. He was probably really crazy. At this moment, the people in the valley wished that they could grow a pair of wings and leave this place quickly. They did not want to be implicated. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen in the 100-sect martial competition? Rebellion was a huge matter. And it was also a matter that could lead to the annihilation of 9 generations. Who would dare to join? Even Leng Shiqi was shocked. Although he had expected that the Benevolence Pavilion or the Thunder Extermination League would use the 100-sect martial competition to stir up trouble, he did not expect Qi Likun to be so bold. Chapter 551. Leng Shiqi was even more suspicious. Who gave Qi Likun such courage? Lei Qingjun did not have much time left, but he was already making backup plans after his death. For example, threatening Donglin County's Mountain Sea sect was one of them. Moreover, there was no unrest in the Thunderfire dynasty. Everyone was living their own lives. It was not like the dynasty was going to split apart. Why would he be so righteous? Moreover, with the Thunderfire Destruction Alliance's strength, just the Discipline Commission of Shantai County and the Dark Lightning Guards were enough to annihilate them. They were not a threat to the Thunderfire dynasty at all. Therefore, Leng Shiqi thought that Qi Likun was either out of his mind or had some backup plan. Qi Likun looked at everyone present. How could he not know what they were thinking? He could not help but sneer. "Everyone, stop hesitating. Do you think you'll be fine if you don't join? My benevolence pavilion has been established in Shantai County for decades. Over the years, we have issued countless benevolence orders. Half of you here are members of the benevolence pavilion. Even if you don't follow me, the Thunderfire dynasty will see you as my accomplices. Your families and sects will be implicated because of this. Therefore, it's not up to you whether you join or not." When he finished speaking, Qi Likun's face was full of gloominess. It turned out that he had been planning this for decades. When everyone heard this, they could not help but curse, especially those who had benevolence orders. Their faces were flushed red. It turned out that they had been tricked long ago. They also knew that Qi Likun was right. According to the Thunderfire dynasty's usual practice of killing innocent people rather than letting them go, they would definitely be seen as Qi Likun's accomplices and annihilated together. "I'll give you one last chance. After I kill Zhan Rui, if you continue to hesitate, don't blame me for disregarding our many years of friendship," Qi Likun said coldly. At this moment, Zhan Rui suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha, ridiculous, extremely ridiculous. Qi Likun, do you think you can shake the Thunderfire dynasty with the strength of the Benevolence Pavilion and these pieces of trash? You want to kill me? With your cultivation base that has just entered the unity of heaven and man realm, you're not worthy. Perhaps I alone won't be enough. What if I add these two?" With that said, 2 seemingly ordinary spirit cultivator walked up to the stage. With every step they took, their chi would soar, and they were not any weaker than Qi Likun. Another 2 experts at the Unity of Heaven realm. When did the Benevolence Pavilion have such a foundation? Looking carefully, someone immediately recognized the 2 Unity of Heaven realm cultivators. Isn't that the Sky Crane Gang's gang leader Gao Han and Grand Elder Xiang Hui? It's true. Even the Sky Crane sect has rebelled. Chi-Lakun opened his arms and said with an arrogant expression, "This is the strength of my Thunder Extermination Alliance. How is it, Lord Town Ambassador? Is this enough?" Jean Rouet was also a little surprised. He had received a secret report that the Benevolence Pavilion was the Thunder Extermination Union. Originally, he thought that he could completely suppress them with his own strength. Now, it seemed that he was a little overconfident. Fortunately, he wasn't unprepared. He shouted, "I didn't expect the Thunder Destruction Union to have secretly developed to this extent. However, since I knew you would cause trouble, how could I not have a backup plan? Brother Peng, show yourself." Just then a green stream of light shot in from outside the valley. When the light dissipated, everyone recognized who it was. It was the previous patrol inspector of Shantai County, Peng Anlin. When he appeared, Chao Peng was the most surprised. Didn't Peng Anlin already live in seclusion? Why was he here with Jean Rouet? He thought about it even more. Since Peng Anlin was back, wouldn't his position as the patrol inspector be over? Peng Anlin was dressed in an ordinary green robe. He said, "After Su Jun betrayed us, I found some clues. Hence, I purposely went into seclusion and continued to investigate in secret. You guys hid well enough. You might as well let Lord Inspector Liu find out the truth." Chi-Lakun surrender. When Chi-Lakun saw Peng Anlin, his face stiffened. However, he had no choice but to release the arrow. He roared, "2 against 3, and you guys think you've won? Everyone come out. Let them see the strength of the Thunder Destruction Union." Boom. Immediately, hundreds of people in the crowd released their spiritual pressure at the same time, and then jumped onto the ring. Looking around, there were 7 or 8 masters of Gang Spirit Realm, more than 20 masters of Spiritual Aperture Realm, and more than 200 masters of Spiritual Pulse Realm. This kind of strength was definitely stronger than a first-rate faction. The spirit cultivators that came to participate in the 100 Sect Martial Competition never thought that there would be so many Thunder Destruction Union members hidden around them. They were all shocked. Lei Haoge, who was still standing on the Jade stage, raged, "What a Chi-Lakun, what a Thunder Destruction Union. So you guys have been secretly nurturing your power. Damn it. If you didn't speak, I would have forgotten." Chi-Lakun laughed in disdain. "Slaughtering King? You're just a piece of trash. Do you really think you're someone important? Do you know why I invited you here and let you sit on the main seat? Do it." All of a sudden, the chair beneath Lei Haoge shattered, and golden chains shot out from within. Hidei was shocked. He held a pitch-black dagger in his hand and released a cold aura around him. However, it was immediately suppressed by the aura of the golden chains. In that short moment, Lei Haoge was tied up tightly by the golden chains. "Hidei, I know you cultivate the baleful Yin spirit constellation. In front of the diamond chains, you should save it." Chi-Lakun's face was filled with pride. Everything was under his control. As long as he killed Jean Rouet and Peng Anlin, he would have Lei Haoge as a hostage. However, Chi-Lakun did not notice that neither Lei Haoge nor Hidei were panicking. It was as if this was within their expectations. At that moment, an extremely sharp and powerful blade aura suddenly appeared and slashed towards the diamond chains. The one who attacked was Feng Shamo. He was originally very close to Lei Haoge. After Leng Shiqi came down, he started a series of shocking events. Therefore, everyone completely ignored him. In truth, after Leng Shiqi received the information, he had secretly contacted Lei Haoge. Furthermore, he had guessed that the Thunder Destruction Union would make a move on him. Thus, he had Feng Shamo as a backup. When the sharp blade aura collided with the diamond chains, sparks flew. The blade aura was actually unable to cut through the chains. Feng Shamo snorted, and countless wind blades appeared on his saber aura, instantly severing the Vajra chains. Chi-Lakun's smile froze. Before he could react, another change occurred. Below the stage, nearly 30 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators suddenly erupted and attacked the Thunder Destruction Union members. Outside the valley, several hundred Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators charged over. These people were He Feichen from the 29th Guard and Lei Haoge's retainers. Hoo-hoo. At the same time, scarlet flames filled the sky and formed a formation that enveloped all the Thunder Destruction Union members. The one who attacked was Elder Huang. Leng Shiqi, who had been ignored by everyone for a long time, said softly, "It's my turn." Chapter 552. Ever since Feng Xiaomo rescued Lei Haoge, the series of unforeseen events caused Qi Likun to be stunned. He began to feel that today's events were already out of his control. Looking at the current battle strength of both sides, the Thunder Extermination Union had a slight advantage. However, it was almost impossible to kill Zhang Rui and Peng Anlin today. Furthermore, even if the Thunder Extermination Union won today, they would suffer heavy losses. It would be extremely difficult for them to cause trouble again. The only thing he could do now was to drag all the spirit cultivators here down with him. However, before he could speak, Leng Shiqi waved his arm and shouted, "The Thunder Extermination Union is extremely daring. Even the heavens will not tolerate their evil intentions. Today we will definitely catch all of you in one fell swoop. Those who do not have anything to do with the Thunder Extermination Union, leave now. Those who do not have anything to do with the Thunder Extermination Union will not be held accountable." Lei Haoge's heart skipped a beat. This was a good opportunity to increase his reputation. He hurriedly shouted, "That's right. This king can guarantee that the Thunderflame dynasty will only target the Thunder Extermination Union. As long as the other powers know their place, they will be innocent." Zhang Rui activated his spirit energy, and his voice resounded through the clouds. "The Discipline Division has been ordered to suppress the Thunder Extermination Union. Those who do not have anything to do with it, leave now." Peng Anlin also spoke. "The Dark Thunder Guards have been ordered to eliminate the Thunder Extermination Union. Those who do not have anything to do with it, leave now." How could the other powers dare to stay here any longer? They immediately left the valley like a tide. Of course, there was someone who did not leave. That was Elder One of the Sky River sect. Elder One did not know that the Sky Crane sect had joined the Thunder Extermination Union. He only found out when Qi Likun sent him a message when he was about to fight with Chao Peng. Since things had already reached this point, he could only choose to stay. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared straight at Leng Shiqi. He did not hide his killing intent at all. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed with a cold light. He pulled out the Blood Shadow sword and ordered, "Kill." His status was not the highest here, and his cultivation was not the strongest, but he had obtained the most crucial information. Most of this was planned by him, so the right to command was given to him. As soon as the word "kill" was uttered, the entire valley was immediately filled with boundless spiritual energy fluctuations. Countless spiritual lights, spiritual techniques, and spiritual highland were wreaking havoc crazily. It was simply appalling. Elder Wan's hands turned into claws, and his pure white stellar energy transformed into a white crane that shot straight at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi was in high spirits. Elder Wan was at the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm. It was the first time for him to fight with a master at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm, which aroused his enthusiasm. He took a step forward, and all kinds of strange auras filled the air around him. His skin instantly turned gray, and pieces of black armor covered his body. Traces of blood-red light flowed, and a pair of arms and a long tail grew out of his back. He looked extremely evil and terrifying. Wild Demon Blood Beast Body. It was the first time for Leng Shiqi to display the complete body of Wild Demon Blood Beast Body in a battle. His aura was definitely not weaker than that of a master at the 3rd level of Gang Spirit Realm. He held the sword in his right hand, and a shocking blood-red light burst out from the blade. Immediately, the blood-red light of the sword slashed down continuously, and his left hand shot out 5 blood-red thunders mixed in the light of the sword. The arms on his back carried a golden spear, and the spear shadows were like endless golden waves, rolling back the sky. The wave-like shadows of the spear collided with the white crane. In an instant, horrible spiritual chi burst out, and the golden and white light twisted, which attracted some people's attention. Hidei, who had been guarding Lei Haoge, was one of them. At this moment, his attention was attracted by Leng Shiqi, because even he had to pay enough attention to Elder Wan's white crane. But Leng Shiqi could easily resolve it. Lung Shiqi turned into an evil spirit and displayed 3 completely different spiritual skills at the same time, which surprised Elder Wan. But judging from the strength shown by Lung Shiqi now, he was no less than that of a master at the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Wen Yuqing's death was not in vain. Lung Shiqi made 3 moves at the same time. The Golden Wave Spear resolved the White Crane. He not only blocked Elder Wan's angry attack, but also turned defense into offense. The ferocious blood-red light of the sword and the thunders had already locked on Elder Wan. Endless pure white Gang Qi bloomed from Elder Wan's hands, like huge ribbons. He directly reached out and crushed the 5 thunders of Blood Skyfinger, and disrupted all the sword lights. However, what he didn't expect was that there were some extremely subtle shadow sword lights hidden under the blood-red light of the sword. They quietly approached Elder Wan without him noticing. Despicable. Elder Wan was shocked and couldn't help but curse. He suddenly clapped his palms, and the vigorous palm force kept squeezing, and finally resolved the shadow sword lights. At the same time, white feathers rose around him. Each of these feathers was condensed by his gang spirit. Just one of them was enough to easily kill a spirit cultivator, who had just entered the spirit aperture realm. Lung Shiqi also looked dignified. It was not easy to deal with a master at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. His powerful spiritual force kept surging. Looking at the sky again, he didn't know when the countless feathers were mixed with colorful petals. The petals suddenly shattered, and in an instant, the densely packed triple extinction sword chi spread out in all directions. Before the white feathers could even display their power, more than half of them were destroyed. Elder One calmed down at this time. He stretched out a hand, which suddenly became as white as jade. He suddenly stretched out, and in an instant, it was as powerful as thunder, ignoring the space and arriving in the blink of an eye. Lung Shiqi felt the terrible power of the jade hand. If he was really hit, he would be injured even if he activated the wild evil demon blood beast body. Boom! Thunder exploded under his feet, and in a flash of purple light, he moved hundreds of feet away. I know you have a high-level body movement spiritual skill. How can I let you escape like this? Elder One showed a triumphant smile. A huge white jade palm, which was hundreds of feet long, covered the sky and the sun, and slapped down fiercely. Lung Shiqi's heart sank. He planned to continue to use residual wind and thunder light steps to leave, but unexpectedly, there was a strange force under the huge white jade palm, which made it difficult for him to move for a while. Let's see if you are still alive. Elder One shouted crazily, as if he had already seen Lung Shiqi's tragic death. A pale yellow semicircular light shield suddenly appeared on Lung Shiqi's body. He pushed his arms to the side, and the semicircular light shield spread around at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wherever the light shield passed, whether it was the arena or the ground, it was overturned by a strong repulsive force. Earth Pulse. The magical anti-gravity force held the huge white jade palm in the air, and Lung Shiqi took the opportunity to flash out. The dark golden light in his hand kept flashing, and the ultimate Yang secret handprint twisted the air and smashed out. The hands on his back quickly made a gesture, and the fire spiritual force between heaven and earth madly gathered to him. Immediately, 9 thick golden fire pillars broke out of the ground, and the dragon flame burned everything. Chapter 553. The destructive power of the ultimate Yang secret handprint was frightening, but for Elder Wan, the real threat came from the 9 Palaces fire formation. That was the 9 Palaces fire formation supported by the red gold earth dragon flame. As soon as the red gold earth dragon flame came out, the temperature of the whole valley rose sharply. The land within a radius of hundreds of feet turned into a sea of flames. Everyone felt hot all over, including those in the oneness of heaven and men realm who were fighting fiercely. There were 3 people in the oneness of heaven and men realm on the Thunder Exterminating League's side, but they were suppressed by Jean Rue and Peng Anlin. Especially Jean Rue, who held a heavy halberd, was so powerful that no one dared to fight with him face to face. At this moment, he still had time to take a look at Lung Shiqi's side, and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. That kind of flame actually made him feel a trace of threat. It was even more so for Elder Wan, who was facing the crimson gold earth dragon flame head-on. At this moment, he was deeply trapped in the Nine Palaces fire formation. The powerful and domineering crimson gold earth dragon flame was constantly burning his gang chi. The moment he revealed a slight flaw, he would be burned to ashes. He was at the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm, but a junior who was half a step away from Gang Spirit Realm had the absolute upper hand. Elder Wan's old face turned red. If he was really defeated today, he could directly slit his own throat and commit suicide without anyone else's help. His white hair fluttered without wind, and an ethereal aura drifted out. He pointed 2 fingers at the sky, and immediately, pure white spiritual highland suddenly bloomed around him. His body turned into a spiritual light and rushed into the sky. With a crane cry, he directly turned into a pure white crane and circled in the sky. Crane roaring in the sky? Wan Jishan, are you crazy? Xiang Hui, the Grand Master of the Sky Crane sect, shouted in horror. The crane roaring in the sky was the supreme secret method of the Sky Crane sect, with infinite power, but the corresponding price was great. The price was to burn one's lifespan. Elder Wan was already old, and didn't have much lifespan left. Now that he was forced to use the crane roaring in the sky, even if he won, he would only have a few days left. Of course, Elder Wan knew that he would not have a good ending. However, no one knew how terrifying the Nine Palace fire formation was. Anyone who came into contact with it would have a layer of skin peeled off. He had no choice but to risk his life. Moreover, if he could use his old body to fight a peerless genius to death, it would be a gain. Elder Wan transformed into a heavenly crane. Just his overflowing aura alone was enough to shatter the ultimate Yang underworld palm. The raging fire pillar of the Nine Palaces fire formation was also suppressed. Sky Crane's blood-red eyes locked onto Lung Shiqi's main body. He spread his wings and soared into the sky. After throwing a punch, his terrifying aura energy formed a huge storm and attacked Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi continued to maintain the Nine Palaces fire formation with his arms behind his back. He suddenly clenched his fists, and 2 dazzling rays of light, one black and one white, suddenly bloomed. The 2 rays of light intertwined and circled around each other. A dragon's roar suddenly resounded through the heavens and earth, and a black and white dragon, more than 100 feet long, descended upon the world. Floating Dragon Taishu. As soon as the black and white dragon appeared, the whole world was shaken. Many people's spiritual skills were affected to a certain extent, and the valley suddenly became a little chaotic. The 5 masters of the oneness of Heaven Realm, who were fighting fiercely, stopped at the same time, and looked over here. Everyone's eyes revealed more or less shock. The power of heaven and earth. He actually activated a trace of the power of heaven and earth. Qi Likun was the most shocked, and his tone was full of disbelief. It's impossible. Even I can't comprehend the power of heaven and earth. How can he, a half-step to Gang Spirit Realm, do it? Gao Han, the leader of Sky Crane sect, also couldn't believe it was true. Another person murmured, Elder Wan is in danger. In the battlefield, the invisible dragon might made the red-crowned crane that Elder Wan transformed into tremble. This was the suppression from the life level. What made Elder Wan even more shocked was that when he was locked by the black and white dragon, he seemed to see death beckoning to him. However, at this time, he had no way to retreat. He made up his mind, and a layer of faint blood chi emerged from his body. He actually burned his essence and blood at the same time. The originally pure white sky crane was dyed with a layer of blood, and became a little demonic. However, when the black and white dragon collided head-on, the edge of the sky crane's body began to collapse before it got close. What was worse, the Nine Palaces fire formation also broke out. The fire pillars turned into rockets and shot directly at the sky crane. The horrible flame seemed to be able to shoot a hole in the sky. The dragon, the sky crane, and the rockets finally collided with each other. The loud explosion in the sky kept spreading, like a volcanic eruption, and even the whole valley faintly trembled. Everyone's attention was attracted. This terrible movement was even louder than the movement of those masters of the oneness of Heaven Realm. When everyone turned around, almost all of them were tongue-tied. It turned out that a charcoal-like body was falling from the sky, and no one knew whether it was dead or alive. That body was clearly Elder One of Sky Crane sect. A dignified elder of a first-class sect at level 7 of Gang Spirit Realm was killed by a junior, who was half a step away from Gang Spirit Realm. Even if he overdrew his lifespan and burned his essence and blood, he could not change this outcome. Those who knew Leng Shiqi were shocked, and at the same time, they listed Leng Shiqi as an enemy they could never make in their life. As for those who didn't know Leng Shiqi, they were simply shocked and couldn't believe their own eyes. Gao Han's eyes turned red, and he attacked furiously. A shadow of an immortal crane flashed behind him, and the divine light above his head soared into the sky. He formed a seal with his hands, and the divine light bloomed with a bang. With endless pressure, he attacked Leng Shiqi directly, as if he wanted to kill him directly. Shameless. Zhan Rui was also shocked and angry. As a master of the oneness of Heaven Realm, Gao Han ignored his identity and attacked a junior, who was 2 realms lower than him. But for Gao Han, he did not care about seniors and juniors. He had seen Leng Shiqi kill their genius disciple Wen Yuqing with his own eyes. At that time, he did not show up in order to hide his identity. Now that he had witnessed his own elder being killed, he would kill Leng Shiqi even if he would lose all his face and be shamed by thousands of people. Zhan Rui hurriedly waved his heavy halberd. At this moment, the sky darkened as if all the light was attracted by the heavy halberd. This move was enough to shatter mountains and rivers. Unfortunately, the divine light was too fast, and Zhan Rui could only block most of it. But still, a small part of it still came to Leng Shiqi. Others saw that it was too late to make a move. Even if they wanted to save Leng Shiqi, they could not get rid of the opponent in an instant. They could only try their best to kill the enemy in front of them first. Feng Shamo did not hide his strength anymore. He rolled out the illusory wind spiritual gang, and directly pulled in 3 masters of Gang Spirit Realm. 1 against 3. Elder Huang quickly formed a seal, and also displayed the 9 palace fire formation. His blazing spiritual gang was condensed by Leng Shiqi, using the Crimson Gold Earth Dragon Flame. Although it was not as strong as the Crimson Gold Earth Dragon Flame, it was still much stronger than ordinary fire spiritual gang. After the fire formation appeared, he directly enveloped the Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators of the Thunder Extermination League. In an instant, screams sounded one after another. Sulwan was like a spirit phoenix, constantly wandering among the Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators. Every time she attacked, there would be blood. She was like a blood fairy, causing people's expressions to change. After Zhuge Puha broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm, his strength had greatly improved. He held the Heavenly Jade Star Diagram sword in his hand and released Star Spirit Gang. He formed a formation out of thin air and drew a blurred star diagram. All the cultivators of the Thunder Extermination League, who were in the star diagram, had their cultivation suppressed by 30%. Immediately he shook his sword and the countless stars in the star diagram all turned into starlight sword chi, surging in all directions like a meteor shower. Leng Shiqi, who was facing the divine light, held the demon arrival battle blade tightly. His whole body surged with pure demonic chi, and even his eyes turned pitch black. The demon arrival battle blade had not fought for a long time, and also let out an excited buzz. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.